Hey, he remembers. This is a story from long ago. It begins with a human king finding a door connected to another world and then opening it. As soon as the door opened, humans began to flee, completely blinded by fear. The reason? Several terrifying creatures started being spewed out from the door that had been opened. Actually, the other world beyond that door was the demon realm, where terrifying demons supposedly live. Creatures came out of the door without pause, and the world, which had always been at peace, was now in ruins. Many humans lost their lives, and the world was painted red. Then, a human king sincerely prayed to God, "Oh God, please give us the power to punish these evil creatures." When this happened, a light fell from the sky, and the creatures disappeared, leaving only black smoke behind. After that, special marks began to appear on some humans, and they ended up receiving mysterious abilities. Those who had the power to resist the terrifying creatures were worshipped and called mages, and they say peace returned to the world after that. But you know what he thinks? Was the one who granted the king's wish really a god? At dusk, in a banquet hall with several carriages and music, a banquet is taking place with various nobles. The blonde-haired lady tells her maid that she was told it would be a mage gathering and comments that she wouldn't have come if she knew it was full of these despicable nobles. Her maid whispers to her to stop, or they will end up hearing her. Seren says that she definitely said that the black mage would come, but she was completely tricked by her maid. Lady Seren comments that she will just sing a song and leave right after, and asks if that's okay. Her maid replies that of course it is. Apparently, a creature inspection was done in the Lupin forest because a train passing through it was severely damaged. Seren questions. And yet, these nobles are just partying, not caring about anything. How disappointing. The maid, embarrassed, calls to her lady. She thinks she wanted to meet the black mage. The nobles around start commenting that Seren will finally begin, while others say they didn't expect to see singer Seren there. Some comment that they heard she has a divine voice, and others say they are curious to see if she is as amazing as the rumors say. Lady Seren gets confused and wonders what happened, as she hasn't even started singing yet. Why are their faces shocked? Then, everyone starts running in desperation. Seren, not understanding, looks back and is shocked to see several creatures outside. Meanwhile, people scream to flee quickly. Seren, lost, questions what the hell is going on. Suddenly, one of the creatures breaks the glass and, with its hand, reaches towards her. Shocked by the scene, she stands still while her maid screams for her. But a person dressed in all black, holding a black scythe, appears, cutting off the creature's arm. In an instant, he easily cuts down the creatures, leaving Seren surprised by the sight. The man in black jumps into the air with his black scythe and uses his ability, destroying the creatures effortlessly. Seren is left with her face dirty, while her maid runs up to her, calling her. Once near, she asks if her lady is all right. Seren responds that it's him, she's sure, the black mage. Meanwhile, outside, he finishes off all the creatures. Seren comments, "I told you, it's him. It's the black mage." Her maid says she understands now and calls for the lady to go somewhere safe first. The nobles around question if she said black mage, while some ask if he's really here, and others say they heard he's from Ophion and is quite famous. Suddenly, he starts walking towards Lady Seren and calls her. The lady, surprised, asks what he wants. The black mage asks if she's hurt. Seren says no, not at all. He replies that he's glad, and says to forgive him for asking this after everything that happened, but asks if he could request just one thing from her. Lady Seren, surprised, replies that of course and says anything. The black mage starts looking for something in his cloak, takes out a paper and pen, and asks if she could give him an autograph. Seren asks, "An autograph?" And he replies, "Yes, right there." She asks if that's all, and the black mage confirms, saying it's true and asks her to write her name there too. The black mage saved several people that day. Sometime later, at the guild building, people are surprised and question if he is the Lord Black Mage. Some ask if he just returned from the mission, while others say they want to try talking to him. The Black Mage always thinks about this, but believes he really hates places with so many people. Annoyed by that, he thinks that's why he didn't want to enter looking like this. The manager calls the black mage Blow and asks what happened and why he entered through the front door at that time. He calls her Miss Wren. She whispers that he doesn't need to say anything because it must have been the master's doing, and asks if he is there to report on the mission. He answers yes. Wren comments that he really completed it, and Blow asks what choice someone dependent like him would have. But he also asks what she's holding. She, somewhat hesitant, asks this, and says it's nothing special. Wren says she needs to go now, the master should be in his office, and invites Blow to eat together later. He answers that it's fine. As she leaves, she ends up dropping a pamphlet. Blow picks it up and says that Wren dropped it, but when he looks, he is speechless. The page has his photo with the title, "Send your request to Ophion, send your request." Miss Wren doesn't know what to do and asks if Blow saw it. He asks if it was the master who did this. She, hesitant, comments that it was supposed to be a secret and says she only told him so he would know, but the master forced her. When Wren looks at him, she sees that Blow is gone. The guildmaster is having tea by the window and says the weather is nice when Blow kicks the door open. The master asks who dares to enter like that, as if trying to break down the door, but then receives a letter to the head, and, when he realizes, sees it's Blow. He says he finally came back and comments that he was waiting for him, asking what happened and if anyone irritated him on the way back. Blow says it's him who's irritating him and tells him to look at that photo. The master asks how he got that and quickly throws the pamphlet away, saying it was nothing, and comments that he doesn't know what Blow wanted him to see. The protagonist asks if he's messing with him and says that wherever Blow goes, it's always a noisy place. He says that the guildmaster sent him back to Ophion looking like this, even made those pamphlets without his permission, and comments that it's so embarrassing that he can't even lift his head while walking. The guildmaster says the great star Blow of Ophion is a shy boy. The protagonist, irritated, slams his hand on the table, handing over the autograph, scaring the master. He takes the paper and comments that Blow managed to complete the mission. Get an autograph from Seren. Blow says that this is the last time he accepts such a ridiculous order as a mission. The guildmaster sighs and says he can't, and talks about all the valuable missions waiting for him, like finding Miss Ellen's lost dog, or delivering Roanne's love letter. All of that. Blow, angrily, says that's enough. The master says that even so, he managed to complete the mission somehow, and comments that they told him Seren doesn't speak a single word to strangers because of her bad personality. Blow says she doesn't seem like that, as it seemed the attack really shocked her. The master asks, attack? And explains that Ravi, where Miss Seren is a safe zone, and asks if she encountered bandits or something like that. Blow answers no, and says they were creatures, medium-sized, not that strong, but those things appeared in Ravi, which has protection from the tower, and questions if that's not strange. The master says the sound is really strange and needs to be investigated further, but comments that he can't believe he asked for her autograph in such a situation. Blow asks who asked him to go there in the first place. The master asks how long he plans to stay in that form and calls him rude. He answers that he's got all the magic in the world to spare, because a certain someone only sends him on strange missions. The master starts laughing. The protagonist starts reciting something. Your name is Blow. Release. And, with that, begins to transform. The guildmaster, surprised, tells Rude he believes he's grown taller since the last time. Rude asks, really? But quickly remembers and tells him to wait, commenting that he got the autograph, so now the master needs to give him a decent mission this time. Staring at him while the master remains silent, the protagonist starts to speak, but is interrupted by the master, who says that after that day, obviously the civilians, as well as many mages, are watching him. In fact, even the Shik Muan Association is determined to find him. Things are only going to get more dangerous from here on out. Everything has changed, and he's worried about that. Rude questions if he still had the courage to do that thing and shows a pamphlet of Blow. The master asks if he has more copies with him. The protagonist tells him to stop with the nonsense and asks if he is going to give him a real mission or not. The guildmaster says they have a big mission, an auction house that opens only 3 times a year, a place that deals exclusively with special and rare items. At this auction, they received information that a magical stone with a name will be on the list of items. Rude comments, a magical stone of the highest category. The master confirms and says the problem is that other mages also receive this information and asks if he understands that this mission could be very interesting. Sometime later, the guildmaster, reviewing paperwork with Rude's photo, comments that in the end, he couldn't show that to him, as if he were there, he'd probably be irritated, right? The paper the master holds is an admission note from the Helios Magic School with the name Rude Chrissy, age 15, and states that his admission was approved as he passed the basic test of the Helios Magic School and met the necessary requirements. Later, at dusk, in the auction house, several mages and nobles are waiting for the event to begin. The auctioneer, escorted by guards, walks to the center and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting," announcing that they will begin today's auction. As many expected, Miss Wren observes the hall and comments that there are many people, questioning if this magical stone called the Heart of Shazan must really be amazing. Rude says it's rare to see a high-level magical stone these days. She comments that she saw many mages and asks if everything will be fine, calling him Mr. Black Mage. Rude questions why it wouldn't be and explains that, above all, he has a different goal from theirs, and his purpose is also different. Wren is confused, while the protagonist thinks that if it's what he's imagining, this would be very funny. Sometime before the mission, Rude asks the master what the objective of the task is. He answers that someone with deep hatred for a certain individual, who will be present at the auction, is targeting him. Carry out your revenge. Rude questions carry out your revenge, and the guildmaster explains that it's about a mage's disciple who ruined the life of his client, a just and direct revenge. That's the request. After investigating, they found that this guy is the typical villain who exploits and takes advantage of the weak. He has had more than 1 or 2 victims recently, but seems to be a clever scoundrel who skillfully evades the law. The protagonist looks at the photo and comments that this mage is not an easy target. The master replies, that's exactly why he's giving this mission to him. Rude then asks if he's suggesting that he eliminate him. The guildmaster immediately denies and states that they can't just eliminate scoundrels like him this way. The protagonist asks what he suggests. The master replies that a high-level magical stone will be for sale, which will attract a lot of attention, whether from people attending the auction, spectators, or those with different intentions. So he will need to find this guy first, in a place with many people. After that, he will need to hold him. Rude wonders, hold him? And questions what that would mean. Breaking his legs, torturing and cruelly oppressing the target. The master, seriously, comments that in the end, he must take his pants off. The protagonist falls silent and then asks what he said. The guildmaster says that he can only take his pants off. Rude says he won't do that. No way. He asks why and comments that he's not even asking him to eliminate the guy, just to lower his pants. Rude asks why the hell he would lower the man's pants and what kind of revenge this is. The master responds that this is what the client wants and tells him to calm down and listen first. He says that according to the client's information, there's a rumor that the target used to be a member of Codal. Rude asks if Codal isn't that criminal organization that disappeared a while ago. The master confirms yes, that at the time it was announced that everyone had been eliminated, but considering the huge reward that was offered, it's no surprise that someone managed to escape. The auction house in Raiden holds a great grudge against Codal. They say there's a tradition among Codal members of using Lehman's poison to mark their legs with the organization's crest, and that this mark can't be removed, no matter what they do. If this mark is revealed in front of everyone at the auction, it would be quite a satisfying revenge, don't you think? Rude is thoughtful and comments that he said this was just a rumor, so he questions what happens if he pulls the guy's pants down and there's no mark. The master asks if that wouldn't be revenge anyway. After all, Having your pants pulled down in public would be quite embarrassing. Rude, irritated, says he won't do that and is about to leave, but the master says that's something only the great star of Ophion can do. Now, back in the present, Miss Wren asks if he's really all right. Rude says he has to find a way somehow. In the VIP room of the auction, a little girl hanging from the balcony, laughing, says that her heart is racing because there are a lot of people. The butler calls her Your Majesty and says she's not here to play. The girl asks if he's serious, and he replies that they're only here to watch. Her Majesty agrees, saying it's true, they're here to watch, and comments that it looks like some very interesting things are going to happen, asking if that's not true, Tessie. The butler calls Lady Tessiana, while Her Majesty says she fell asleep. In another VIP room, a man shakes a bell to place a bid and calls Lapis. He asks if his father needs anything, and his father just tells him to compose himself and pay attention, as there are many mages gathered here, so it will be a great spectacle. The young man says he understands and calls him father. In another booth of the auction house, a beastly man calls Shik and says that today's mission is to protect the magical stone up to a certain point and asks if he knows this. He comments that he wants to make it clear they're here to protect the item, not destroy it, and asks if he's listening. Shik, with a tree branch, keeps doing loves me not paying attention, and continuing to ignore his superior, who gets irritated and calls his attention again. But Shik tells the old man to shut up. The superior gets angry, asks who he's calling an old man, and says he's going to go over the plan again. Shik reaches the last leaf of the branch, throws it on the ground, steps on it, and burns it with a slight smile, saying he's leaving. The auctioneer comments that the item is the precious right necklace, sold to the young lady there, and congratulates her. Right after, he says that finally, it's time for the main character to appear, and comments that most of them already know. But this is a precious and hard-to-get item, the largest of the magical stones ever seen, imbued with the power of the mighty Shazarno, the heart of Shazan. People around are surprised by the magical stone's shine, while the auctioneer tells everyone to admire that dazzling brilliance and asks if they can't feel the immense power sealed there just by looking at it. This is the opportunity to become the owner of the most powerful magical stone. This is your only chance. Miss Wren asks Rude if he found the target, and he replies that he couldn't see well and says it might be true, as the energy of the people is all mixed up. Or maybe something happened and he couldn't come today. Wren tells him to stop with that. Rude comments that, in that case, it's better for him to be prepared too. And with that, Rude hides behind the curtain and starts reciting his transformation. Your name is Blow, Awaken. Miss Wren, holding the curtains, comments that no matter how many times she sees it, it's still interesting. Mages who can change their appearance like him are extremely rare, and she wonders how a child can turn into such a handsome man. Blow apologizes for being a kid, and Miss Wren laughs and says she was just kidding. She asks how his mana is, and he replies that it's enough. But the most important thing is that they're coming. Wren, confused, asks who. Suddenly, the glass ceiling of the hall is broken, and Wren and Blow just watch while the guards quickly rush toward the magical stone. A man, threatening the auctioneer with a dagger, shouts for them to get out of his way and calls them fools while laughing. He and his accomplice comment that the mana stone is theirs. Miss Wren asks who these people are, and the guards surrounding the two tell them to lower their weapons, drop them to the floor, and step back. L replies no, and that it's them who should step back, raising his voice with magic, making the guards cover their ears. Rogue takes the chance, uses his weapon, and pushes the guards, while L throws the auctioneer to the ground, asking if it's over, and comments that he was so bored he couldn't hold back anymore, saying they're going to take that little stone with them now. The beastly man appears and grabs L's arm. He asks who he is, but the beastly man just tightens his arm, making him scream in pain. L falls to the ground, clutching his arm, and when he sees the gloves on the man's hand, he questions if he's a mage from the association. The mages and nobles are surprised and ask the association, while a mage starts saying that there really was a famous mage like him in the past, with beast ears and a tail. Another says he remembers and mentions that he's the association's lapdog, the hunting dog of Lanost. The beastly man, irritated, questions how he's being called a dog, intrigued, saying that he's not a dog and asking who the bastard was who called him that. Rogue, annoyed, calls him an association worm and throws his magical weapon with all his might, sending him to hell. But the weapon hits the little dog's head and rises as if it were nothing. Elle and Rogue are shocked to realize that nothing happened, while the nobles are surprised to see the weapon embed itself in the wall. The hunting dog calls Rogue and comments that, just to make it clear, that hurt like hell, and asks if he knew. Elle and Rogue, in silence, begin to tremble. Miss Wren says she thought they were dealing with a bunch of idiots and says he must have had a trump card up his sleeve, but questions a mage from the association, how unexpected. Blow calls Miss Wren and tells her to look carefully, as this person is the mage who was with that guy that day. Wren asks if it could be him. The little dog comments that she's right and tells all the mages present to pay attention, saying he knows how excited everyone is about the rare high-grade monostone, but if they act like fools, they'll end up like those two right there. So it's better to wait until the auction is over, and asks if they understand. From this point on, anyone who touches the monostone or shows suspicious intent will have to deal with him personally. And now that he believes everyone understands, it's better to return to the auction. But when they turn around, they notice that the monostone is gone. The auctioneer points his finger to the top of the statue, saying that it's up there. The hunting dog, seeing Shik with the stone, calls out to him and questions what the hell he's doing. Shik says he can feel him and that he's definitely there. The little dog is surprised to hear that when Shik shouts loudly, calling the black mage, and asks if this is what he's after, saying that if this is what the black mage wants, he should just take it from him, and if the black mage doesn't come, he believes he'll have to use it himself. People around ask who this black mage is, while some say that's Shik Muan from the association. And finally, others ask what's going on with the monostone. Miss Wren asks Blow if this black mage they're talking about is him, and says this got more complicated than she thought. Judging by the look, if he finds them, it won't be pleasant, and asks if it wouldn't be better to back off for now. Blow replies no, saying he can't abandon the mission just because of an idiot like him. Watches Shik and asks if it's the woodpecker. Wren sighs and says they'll find a way. A magic knight says he came here with high hopes to get the rarest and highest grade monostone in years, but this Shik Muan is ruining all his chances of trying to get it. Another magic knight comments that there are so many mages around and wonders if it wouldn't be better to try taking him down by force. The long-haired knight asks if he's crazy and comments that the guy is on another level. Basically, this is the Shik Muan from the association they were talking about earlier, and he also remembers the black mage he fought recently and asks what kind of lunatic would challenge Shik Muan. Suddenly, both are surprised. Meanwhile, Shik, on top of the statue, says he understands and comments that the black mage isn't afraid, but is just playing hide-and-seek. The hunting dog tells Shik to stop playing around and get down from there, but he tells the old man to just leave. The old hunting dog gets angry and asks if he really wants to get beaten by him, when suddenly someone strikes the statue, leaving both surprised. The statue starts to fall toward the old man and the auctioneer, and the hunting dog questions what's going on now. The statue crashes to the ground, causing a huge dust cloud, and as the dust clears, Lady Tessiana appears with her sword. The hunting dog asks why she did that, and she replies that she came to participate fairly in the auction and even brought a silver coin. The old man wonders what she's going to buy with a silver coin. Tessiana, serious, comments that Shik interrupted. Shik Muan says, actually no, because it was her who interrupted and calls her a crazy bitch. Miss Wren, surprised, asks where that woman with blue hair came from and says she doesn't know how long this person will give them. but this is a good opportunity, and asks if it's not true. Blow. He answers that of course, and with a slight smile, comments that he found his target. Meanwhile, in the middle of the hall, amidst the statue dust, some debris starts flying to the sides, while the sound of swords clashing echoes rapidly in several places. Tess, with her sword, charges at Shik Muan, preparing to strike a heavy blow, gaining momentum in the air. But Shik Muan easily stops her attack by grabbing her sword with his left hand. Tessiana is surprised, while Shik, serious, asks why these idiots who don't know their place are gathering here to bother him. With that, he gathers magic in his right hand and strikes, Tess throwing her far away, making her crash into the wall and causing an explosion that raises another cloud of dust. But Shik Muan notices something. The woman starts to get up, saying her name is Tessiana, and with that, she begins to gather her mana and uses her awakening, emanating a strong energy. Shik Muan questions if she thinks using the awakening will make a difference. Tess tells him to prepare himself and, at high speed, charges at him again. Her Majesty, happily seeing the explosions, tells the butler to look at this, because Tess has awakened and it's really cool. The butler tells the princess that he thinks it would be better if they return now, but she replies that she doesn't want to. The butler says there's no choice, since Tessiana, who's supposed to be her bodyguard, is acting this way. They left secretly, and if anything happens to the princess, his head will roll on the ground, so it's better to leave now before something else happens. The local authorities begin ordering people to evacuate the area, while some wonder what's going on, and others ask where the mana stone is. Some people say they're sure it fell around here somewhere. In the middle of the chaos, the hunting dog, irritated, tells everyone to get out of the way and thinks that Shik, that idiot, should have handed him the mana stone if he was going to start a fight, and wonders where it fell. The protagonist, disguised, starts walking through the crowd while stealthily following his target. Blow thinks there are too many people, and since everyone is focused on the mana stone, now is the best time, considering how chaotic it is, and wonders how he can expose the emblem on his legs without looking suspicious. He wonders if taking off his pants is really the only way. There must be some other way. Blow hears people and authorities asking where the hell the mana stone is and who took it, then calls a knight and comments that he clearly saw that guy in purple hiding it. The magic knight asks if it's the smiling one, and he answers yes. He's sure he saw him hide it in his pants. The knight goes to him and asks if he took the mana stone. People question if that guy stole the mana stone and tell them to grab him. Blow wonders if it's really working, and suddenly, the smiling mage strikes the knight's arm and calls them idiots, questioning how they found out. Blow, surprised, wonders if he really stole the mana stone, while the smiling mage says he almost managed to escape with it and comments that now that it's in his hands, he won't return it, introducing himself as Clork, using his awakening and telling everyone to listen well, calling them trash, and saying the mana stone is already in his possession, so anyone who wants to take it from him will lose their life, casting some spells toward the people. The black mage appears, cutting the spells with his black scythe and quickly advancing toward the smiling mage, disarming him and throwing his dagger to the ground and pointing his scythe at the smiling mage, commenting that he imagines it won't be easy. Suddenly, Shik Muan notices the black mage's magic and quickly turns around. Tess takes the chance and tries to land a blow on him. The smiling mage falls to the ground, while people around say that the black aura could be from the black mage. Blow puts away his scythe, while the smiling mage says he will never return the mana stone because it's his. The black mage questions how the stone is his when he literally stole it, but comments that, anyway, he's not after the mana stone. Suddenly, everything around starts to tremble. Blow feels something quickly, turns, and sees a massive red magic coming toward him. Blow dodges the attack and wonders if that's a sword. Right after, at high speed, Shik Muan appears near him, pulling him and saying hello to the black mage. The protagonist gets serious and says it's Shik Muan. Then, a huge explosion occurs due to the aura emanating, and people start running while some are shocked by the destruction. Tessiana, fallen, says she's in pain, clenching her fist and commenting that even her sword was taken from her, so next time, she won't lose. The smiling mage begins to run, seizing the opportunity, thinking the mana stone is his. Some knights and mages run after him, telling him to stop, with some saying he's fleeing with the stone. The smiling mage invokes a spell and tells the weaklings to get lost, casting his magic and creating another explosion, thinking that with this, the weak should stay behind. Suddenly, behind him, a hooded woman appears, ready to land a punch on him, asking if he didn't think there would only be weaker mages than him there. The smiling mage manages to defend her attack, but quickly several mages using magical cloaks appear around him, surrounding him. People keep talking about the black mage and Shik Muan fighting. Lapis, surprised, wonders if it's really the black mage facing Shik Muan, and, as he watches the fight, believes the place is going to collapse. But when he turns to call his father, he's confused to realize that his father isn't there. So he asks Rune where his father is, and she answers that His Majesty left first. Lapis thinks that maybe he should leave too, as it would be the safest thing to do, but at the same time, a fight between such strong mages is something he doesn't want to miss. Miss Ren, shocked, thinks that in the end, it turned out this way, that it really is Shik Muan, and no one expected him to appear. Furthermore, since this was a low-risk mission, she didn't bring any orbs to replenish her mana, and the longer the fight goes on, the more at a disadvantage Blow will be, so she wonders what he's planning. Blow, with his weapon in hand, stares at Shik Muan and comments that he'll clarify one thing: he has no intention of fighting him. Shik Muan asks if he swears, and Blow confirms, saying that he didn't even come after the mana stone in the first place, and asks if Shik Muan isn't there to protect the stone until the end of the auction, since his colleague said that. So, he suggests that they just ignore each other and that Shik Muan should undo that ridiculous mana circle. But Shik Muan replies that he's not in the mood and doesn't care whether Blow came for the mana stone or not, as he's been looking for him since that day. He comments that since Blow has been hiding in Ophion as if he were some kind of treasure, he's investigated every incident or mission related to him and still couldn't find him anywhere. Blow thinks that's obvious after all. It's not like he's been walking around handing out autographs with a watermelon on his head. Shik Muan comments that now he's right in front of him and charges quickly at Blow, telling him to see for himself the vision of that day, the vision that gave him chills. As Blow defends the attack, Shik starts summoning a fire spell with his other mana and says he'll see it soon, before being eliminated. The battle grows more intense and violent, causing explosions all around. People scream that everything is collapsing, and several debris start flying. The hunting dog begins helping people with his magic, and wonders if Shik Muan really wants to destroy everything there, considering how excited he is. The auction has already turned into complete chaos, but at least this will serve as an excuse when he retrieves the mana stone. Meanwhile, the mages continue fighting the smiling mage for the stone. He dodges a strike and asks what they're doing. The mages charge at him, telling him to hand over the stone and asking where he hid it. The smiling mage jumps into the air, calling them idiots, until the magic night Blow spoke to earlier yells that the stone is in his pants. The smiling mage, shocked, questions what he said and says that's crazy, while the mages stare at him in silence. Surprised and angry, the smiling mage yells that this isn't true, calls them all damned, and tells them not to come near him. Shik Muan, standing in the middle of the dust, grabs a cloak in his hand and falls silent. In one of the VIP rooms, the black mage hides with two nobles, whispering for them to stay silent and leave immediately, as it's dangerous to stay in that place. The women hurry out, while the protagonist wonders who will eliminate whom, thinks everything is deplorable, and wonders why he should waste mana on such a pointless fight. Now that he thinks about it, his master has only given him strange missions since that day, so he wonders if it's because of Shik Muan. He believes people have already started leaving, so he can consider the mission a failure. But before that, he needs to confirm if he really has the emblem. Shik Muan says that if Blow doesn't want to fight, then he'll force him. And now that he thinks about it, he realizes there are too many distractions in that place. So he comments that if he clears away the accumulated trash, maybe Blow will change his mind. People running feel the ground shake and are startled when they look up, wondering what's going on, and they see that Shik Muan has created a gigantic mana circle on the ceiling of the auction house. The smiling mage, nervous, wonders what the hell that is, while the mages continue running after him, telling him to stop. He calls them crazy and tells them to look up, asking if they don't care about what's about to happen. Suddenly, Blow kicks him, sending him flying backward and telling him to get out of there immediately. The mages, surprised, ask if it's the black mage. Blow replies, saying that if they value their lives more than the mana stone, they'd better leave right now, because this place might collapse soon. The hunting dog calls out to Shik and asks what he's doing, telling him to stop this now, and asking if he doesn't see that there are still people there, questioning if he's trying to eliminate everyone in that place. Miss Wren thinks that it's pure chaos, and while running, she wonders where Blow is, as she needs to find him and escape with the teleportation scroll immediately. Something about all of this feels very sinister. The smiling mage says that's right, that you can't trust rumors nowadays. And who would have thought he would be such a greedy person, asking if his plan is to keep the magical stone all to himself. Blow replies, the pot calling the kettle black, while the smiling mage asks what he's talking about. Observing the smiling mage, the protagonist asks if he belongs to that cult. The smiling one questions what nonsense the black mage is talking. He replies that the bounty on his head is quite high. Even though time has passed, thinking of acting in Raiden, he's really an idiot. The smiling one tells him to shut up and asks what kind of nonsense this is. Blow, in disbelief, thinks that based on his reaction, it seems like it's true, and comments that he can confirm this personally. He responds no, and that he will give the mana stone. The protagonist wonders if he will really give it to him and tells him to wait a bit. But suddenly, Shik Muan appears, stepping on his head and throwing him to the ground. He comments that he knows that the mana stone doesn't matter to Blow, but it's not fun fighting with scum like this, and asks if he doesn't agree. The protagonist replies yes, and says, how about we talk first? But suddenly, Blow jumps back, dodging Shik's attack, and thinks that it seems like it won't work. While in the air, Shik Muan grabs Blow's leg and throws him against the wall. With a smile on his face, he tells him to play with him soon. The protagonist watches and realizes that Shik is coming for him again. He wonders if this is serious and charges at him as well. When they're about to collide, they notice something strange, and their magic starts to disappear. They both fall back to the ground. Meanwhile, Blow wonders what just happened. His mana fusion disappeared. The hunt dog appears calling Shik and cursing him, but soon realizes something. Several magic circles are appearing all over the auction. The people, surprised, ask why there are magic circles there. Suddenly, something begins to emerge from the magic circles. The people run in panic, screaming that it's a demon. Rune calls the young master Lapis, and he asks where that thing came from. She replies that it came from the magic circles on the ground. The demon moves its tentacle towards two people, who begin to scream for help. Lapis asks Rune to give him a sword. She questions if he's going to fight and comments that she won't stop him. He replies that for sure, his skills may not be enough, but it's better than standing there like an idiot doing nothing. With that, he steps in front of the people, telling them not to worry because he will save them. But suddenly, the monster's tentacle heads his way and throws him away. But his guard, Rune, jumps in the air and catches him. She questions if this isn't a very ugly jellyfish or maybe a giant octopus, and asks what they should call this thing. With her magic, she invokes the Rune's bow and shoots the tentacle, exploding it. The hunt dog, running, asks what the hell this thing is, and if those are summoning circles. Blow also questions, summoning circles, and the hunt dog quickly realizes it's the black mage's doing and comments that it looks like it. Blow asks if there are mages capable of summoning demons. He replies, Not that he knows. The black mage wonders how this is happening, summoning multiple monsters in a place like this. Suddenly, Miss Wren appears calling him. Blow asks if she didn't escape. Wren asks what he's talking about and comments that she can't just leave alone like a coward. The hunt dog wonders if she's one of his companions from Ophion, but the lady doesn't even look like a mage. The association's little dog goes to Shik, but soon sees some tentacles heading his way and tells him to look behind. Shik Muan explodes them with his magic. The hunt dog asks about the mana stones. Shik says they're gone. He, shocked, asks what that means and where Shik threw them. He stays silent, looking at his hand, and says they disappeared. Miss Wren calls Blow and tells them to use the teleportation scroll and get out of this crazy place immediately. He replies yes, and when he was about to say something, he's interrupted by Shik, who asks if the black mage is leaving already and who let him. Wren asks what he's doing and questions if he doesn't see the state they're in. She yells at the hunt dog to call his companion. Blow, with his weapon, believes the mana didn't disappear and wonders if it was just a temporary phenomenon. He asks Shik Muan if he felt it earlier. Shik questions if he's talking about the mana disappearing. Blow says yes and believes it wasn't his doing. And these moments, something about them feels strange. So now is not the time to fight. Shik Muan says that strange or not, he doesn't care and begins exhaling his aura, delivering a blow. Suddenly, an explosion occurs, leaving Wren surprised. The hunt dog appears in front of Blow, taking the hit, telling Shik to stop now, saying that stubborn people aren't attractive. Wren wonders what he's talking about, while the hunt dog says that besides that, with all this noise, the wizards from the tower will come running, and he knows better than anyone that nothing good will come from meeting the wizards from the tower. Blow thinks that he endured that with his own body, and the hunt dog says that they should leave quickly. Shik Muan, serious and with a raised voice, tells him to get out of the way and comments that he will not forgive anyone who stands in his path, even if it's him, calling him an old man. The black mage wonders if he's gone mad. Miss Wren calls Blow and says that it's exactly as the hunt dog said. It will be problematic if the wizards from the tower arrive, so they better leave. Suddenly, a tentacle comes towards her, and Blow shouts for Wren to look behind. She's confused, but soon realizes Lapis is running towards her with a sword, and with that, he strikes the demon with his sword. Lapis then asks if Wren is okay. The lady quickly turns around, and seeing the situation, she thinks that she should be the one asking if he's okay. Rune asks the young master if she could give him a hand, and he asks if Rune really needs to ask. But suddenly, a blow cuts the demon, and Lapis falls to the ground. The black mage, on top of the demon, asks if Wren is okay, and she replies that she is. Blow thinks it's a monster with no core or intelligence. Rune goes to Lapis and asks if he's okay. The young master Lapis thinks that this must be the black mage, and looking the other way, he thinks that must be Shik Muan, and thinks they're both powerful mages. Blow looks at the smiling one and thinks he still can't verify it. Miss Wren calls him and says, "What's up?" and tells him to forget the damn mission. She believes she knew something was wrong from the moment she slept poorly, and comments that it's a good thing she brought that. Blow tells her she should go first. Wren questions if he's really planning to take his pants off in this situation. Lapis, in disbelief, asks, "Take off what?" Rune says it's the pants. The black mage feels embarrassed and comments that it's not that, and says that since the monsters are still around and there are many people there, Miss Wren tells him not to worry, because the tower will take care of it. That's their specialty, after all. Wren calls Lapis and says that although it's an exaggeration to say this is a return for help, she asks if they want to go with them and get out of there alive. She comments that it's a teleportation scroll with a capacity for up to 4 people. Lapis gets excited hearing that and believes he'll be able to travel with the black mage. Wren says that, obviously, if he doesn't want to, that's fine. Lapis quickly responds that they're very grateful for her offering to take them, and Rune thinks they also have a teleportation scroll. The hunt dog, while holding Shik, thinks that his head is already aching just from imagining the report he'll have to write later, and tells Shik Muan that because of him, he'll have to write a report. Shik, irritated, headbutts backwards, hitting the old man's chin. Miss Ren begins reciting the spell. The location is wherever she wants. The condition is contact. Blow tells everyone to hold on. Lapis says he understood. In that way, Shik says it's really annoying and questions why they're running away, asking where that arrogant bastard from before went. Lapis is scared seeing the aura coming from Shik Muan and tells the black mage that the mage there seems to be staring at them in a scary way. Blow tells him not to worry about that crazy person, because Shik must be thinking a lot about something, and quickly calls Ren very quietly. She asks if he cannot bother her, as she needs to concentrate. Shik Muan asks if the black mage really thought he'd let them leave and calls him a bastard, creating a huge magic circle on the auction ceiling, which even the demons notice. The hunt dog says, "What's up, Shik? Not again?" Lapis is shocked seeing that, while Blow calls Ren to hurry up. She, concentrating, begins to say, wherever she wants, teleportation. Suddenly, a huge explosion occurs in the auction house. Meanwhile, in the forest, the person who was creating the magic circles to summon the demons realizes that they've been destroyed. Vaynor Duskshade says, "How interesting," and asks if she doesn't think so. Miss Rubymonter, she asks what's interesting about such a big scene for something so trivial and comments that humans are very boring creatures. The next day in the guild, the master, seeing the report, comments that the buildings were destroyed, the mana stone is gone, and even an unknown monster appeared. So many surprises! And starts laughing. Miss Ren asks if he's laughing, and he says that's not it. Irritated, she says that he sent them to expose someone, but they ended up caught in this mess, and she thinks it's a bit funny. The guildmaster says that, still, it's a good thing they returned safely. She, still irritated, says, "Of course." He comments that he's serious and that he didn't know either. Raphael Edivane says that if he knew Shik Muan would be there, he would never have sent them. Ren asks why that guy is so fixated on Blow and comments that it doesn't seem like he just wants to fight. The master says that, well, both father and son are a bit crazy, so how could he know what's going on in their heads? Miss Ren wonders, father and son. Raphael Edivane says that, with time, he'll eventually lose interest, so for now, they'll avoid getting into trouble, even though it seems a little unfair. Ren says that's why he's been giving Blow strange missions lately. He replies that part of it is because he wanted Blow to rest too. Besides that, looking at the situation, it seems strange, no matter how much he thinks about it. He was skeptical since they said a high-ranked mana stone would appear at a public auction, but a monster being summoned in mass, and the sudden disappearance of mana, this doesn't seem to be the end of it. Miss Ren comments that it seems like both the association and the tower will be busy. The guildmaster says probably, but asks where Rude ran off to after handing in this poorly done report. Rude thinks that, even though he expected this, there's no information about monster summoning in the records, and he believes it must be impossible to find anything in the regular records in the end. A young man with green hair comments that the drink he ordered is there, and says, "It's been a while." Rude Hyung, and comments that he hasn't seen him lately, so he must be studying, and asks why there are so many books. The protagonist says he was curious about something. Ben says it's complicated and questions how he's reading those things, commenting that he didn't know he was so smart. Rude asks if he just realized that. Ben says his sister told him that people should be humble. The protagonist says there are many clients today, and he must be quite busy. He replies not much, since everyone is busy talking, and asks if Rude also heard about the Black Mage's performance. He wonders, what performance? Ben says that there was a very expensive mana stone in Ravi, but some evil mages tried to steal it, but the Black Mage appeared out of nowhere, chased the evil mages, and saved the day. Rude wonders if he really did that, because he's sure everything was destroyed because of the explosion. The boy says it's so cool, and hopes his sister can become a powerful mage like the Black Mage. The protagonist asks if he has a sister. Ben replies that he does, and says his sister was accepted into Helios recently. Rude asks if by Helios he means the school. Ben comments that it's not just a school. Helios is a really special place where only incredible people can go, but he's sad because they'll be separated. There's no other way. At least he can write a letter when he misses his sister. But she told him not to send too many letters, since that could distract her from studying. Still, if he's not mistaken, he's already written about 10 letters. Suddenly, a voice calls for Ben, and he comments that he has to go now and tells Rude to study a lot. He responds that he will. While running off, the protagonist becomes thoughtful for a moment and begins focusing on the people around. People start commenting various things like, seems like Shik Muan won the fight. The black mage rescued the people there. I heard the explosion was a secret plan of the tower. Apparently, the Mana Stone was taken by a guy named Cloak. Rude thinks that there are many rumors going around, and in the end, that guy took all the blame. But seeing how there's no mention of the monster, it seems like the tower has a hand in this. Anyway, for a monster to appear in a city protected by the tower's barrier, if that's not the case, then maybe something happened with the barrier. No, things wouldn't be so calm if that had happened. Anyway, he recorded the magic circle he saw, but wonders if it will even be useful. Still, he believes he needs to see the master first. In another location, a noise echoes. A hooded person listens when they are called Lispin. He replies that it seems like something is happening ahead, but it's not something they need to worry about. Lispin asks Lady Daner if she'll really be okay. She replies that she already told him it's fine, and asks how many times he's going to ask, telling Lispin not to worry about useless things. She asks him to listen carefully, and if she can be of any help to that child, even a little, she wants to do everything in her power. While Rude walks through the city, he thinks that it's not like he'll get an answer just by staring at it. Suddenly, the piece of paper in his hand flies forward. He thinks, "What the hell?" And when he approaches again, it flies away again. Surprised, he wonders how far it's going to fly. In another place, a young man shouts to return it. A group of nobles is holding his bag and asks, "What if we don't want to?" Commenting that they just took a bag that was thrown away. The young man says, "How many times do I have to repeat that I just left it aside for a second, and I won't cause problems for this, so please return it." He asks what they think about this idea. The leader of the group, irritated, says that he would even consider it if he begged, but there's a little shit shouting there, so he tells him to think carefully. He says that when the guards arrive, he might lose his life. Suddenly, the paper hits him right in the face. The noble says, "What the hell is this?" and throws the piece of paper on the ground, commenting that it doesn't matter. The bag is his now. Suddenly, a voice comments, "It's dirty." Rude picks up his paper from the ground. The white-haired noble asks who the brat is when one of the henchmen says the bag disappeared. Rude, with the bag in hand, gives it to the young man, and he thanks him. The others wonder when he took the bag and tell him to return it immediately. The protagonist replies that he just picked it up along the way too. Quickly, the owner of the bag runs off. The men tell him to stop, but the leader of the group tells them to let him go and comments that since this brat messed everything up, they'll have to teach him a lesson first, and orders the group to surround him. The protagonist wonders if he's a strength-type mage, but he seems to be the weakest of the low-class mages. The mage says that he can't know the world yet, and says that this adult there will teach him a great lesson. Rude thinks he doesn't want to get involved in unnecessary things, so he thinks it's better to run. So, the protagonist runs and jumps from a high place, leaving the group confused. While falling, he sees a carriage passing by and thinks it's a good idea to go to it. As he approaches, Lispin notices him. Lady Daner just hears the noise and gets confused. The other magical knights are shocked to see the protagonist on top of her carriage. Rude, on top of the carriage, sighs and comments that this carriage is pretty sturdy. Everyone falls silent, so he takes the chance, jumps to the ground, and runs off. Meanwhile, they continue not believing what they saw. A female knight asks who that kid was when she sees Lispin running quickly toward him. Lispin tells him to stop while pointing his sword at his neck. Rude looks back and thinks that he's fast. Sir Lispin asks if he knows who owns the carriage he stomped on. The protagonist replies that he doesn't know, but he's very sorry, bows, and says that he didn't know a noble was in that carriage. Also, even if he had been forced to do it, he wouldn't have, so he's really sorry for that, and comments that he'll be more careful from now on, then asks if Lispin could forgive him just this once. Sir Lispin says it's fine. Rude runs off and thanks him, saying that he's leaving now. Lispin stays silent, watching as the magical knight arrives laughing and says that he really apologized, and asks why he raised his sword to a kid. Lispin replies, a kid, and says that he landed perfectly even after jumping from such a high place, making it impossible for him to be just an ordinary kid. The woman asks if he didn't defeat several mid-level demons when he was his age and says that she's really shocked. She comments that maybe that kid has a bright future ahead and asks what Lispin thinks about taking care of another one of those. He gets serious and glances at her quickly. The woman says she'll stay quiet. Lady Daner appears, saying that it's interesting, and comments that the kid seems strong and smart. The woman asks if it would be okay to recruit him for the squad. Lispin pulls his hair and says, that's enough, and Lady Daner starts laughing. Sir Lispin asks if Lady Daner hurt herself from the impact, and she replies, no, asking him not to worry, as the carriage is indeed very sturdy, and actually, now that they're getting closer and the weather is pleasant, she thinks it would be nice to walk a bit. Lispin replies, as you wish. Rude, watching from afar, thinks that it's just as he expected. She seems to be a noble, and besides that, that guy is quite talented. Anyway, he'll take advantage that they let him go, sighs deeply, and, while starting to leave, wonders why he feels so unlucky these days. Well, it's not like they're going to see each other again. Sometime later, the protagonist is in disbelief at the situation, seeing the noble woman and the two knights in front of him, and feels confused by the scene. Rude asks the master why he is there, and believes it would be better to leave. Raphael Edivane tells him not to even think about it, and comments that it was the client's request for him to stay there. Lady Daner asks if this is the boy. The master confirms and says that, although he seems short and weak, he's the most talented of them. The protagonist, confused, wonders what this guy is up to. Lady Daner comments that he seems quite young, then asks if he's a member of Ophion and concludes that he must be an official mage. Raphael Edivane replies that yes, and says that although he became a mage as a novice from the 7th class, he's still the best among his peers. Rude wonders what this crazy guy is saying and what 7th class means. Daner comments that there seem to be many hidden talents in Ophion, and there's also a rumor about a black mage on the streets. She heard he's incredibly talented. The guildmaster comments that the incident this time was really noisy. Lady Daner asks what will happen now. Since she came personally, she would at least like to meet the man from the rumors once. Raphael Edivane regrets and says that the black mage is out on a mission. Daner confirms, says that in that case, there's nothing to be done. She thinks she's a little late, and tells Rude that they'll meet again. The guildmaster is confused while Rude just remains silent. Lady Daner comments that she believes he didn't see her earlier, but the carriage he fell into was hers. Raphael questions if he fell into a carriage, and he responds that there's an explanation. Daner comments that it must be fate and tells the Ophion master that if this is the boy, then he must be very reliable. Raphael sighs and thanks her for the words, calling her Duchess Ardian. Rude is surprised and thinks that he knew she was from the nobility, but a duchess. The duchess asks if they'll get down to business and comments that, as she already said, he must have guessed, but the real reason she came personally is because of her second son who is in Helios. Sometime after the conversation, Raphael says that what the duchess is saying is that the second prince. She interrupts him and says, yes. To simplify, her second son is having trouble adjusting to school life. She calls her knight Fran, who responds that she understands, takes a data book, and hands it to her. Duchess Ardian says that those are the data from Helios, as well as the student list, and there's a report on the current situation. The protagonist wonders, Helios, and believes he's heard that name so many times today. Lady Daner says it's only been a month since he entered Helios, and she's still not sure what exactly has happened in that time. But now, her son is being called a monster. The guildmaster, surprised, asks who would dare call the second prince of Ardian that. She responds that it's not just her son who's going through that. As they know, once someone enters Helios, outsiders cannot interfere with internal matters, and she can't just take him out of school. She comments that he's a delicate, vulnerable child who easily feels lonely. Since childhood, he's always been overshadowed by his siblings, never received the love or attention he needed, and even she couldn't give him what he deserved. Because of this, he became very fragile, unable to express the pain he's feeling, and she just doesn't want him to get hurt even more. More importantly, she can't stand seeing him treated like that in that place. She simply can't accept it. Meanwhile, Lisbon is staring at Rude. Lady Daner says that her request is simple. Help her son have a peaceful school life in that place where he's suffering so much. So, she asks, please to protect him. Sometime later, Rude, irritated, asks the master to explain that to him. He questions, what? And the protagonist angrily asks, what kind of nonsense is this what? And wonders if he's pretending not to know, saying that he's obviously talking about this ridiculous situation they've put him in. Raphael Edivane replies that it's exactly what he heard. The Duchess made a request, and it's him who will take care of it. Rude, indignant, says no way, asks if he's messing with him, and tells him to forget the request. He says it's not important because he doesn't believe the master made him appear in front of other people, and also questions what this 7th class talk is. Raphael Edivane replies that he couldn't just sit him on a couch and say, actually, he's the Black Mage. It's already shocking enough to say he's an official mage with that appearance. Rude wonders if he's serious, and believes it was just a matter of not introducing him. The master laughs and says that there's nothing to worry about. Despite being the best magic school, the students there are just rookies who haven't even awakened yet. They're recruits. The protagonist says he never agreed with that and asks if he didn't receive the report from Miss Wren about the mission that went wrong. He says they need to investigate what happened there. The guildmaster tells Rude that he doesn't need to worry about that now, that he'll take care of it himself. So Rude just needs to focus on this mission. With that, Raphael hands him the admission letter. Rude, seeing the letter, is surprised and quickly asks if he's messing with him. The master says he'll explain first. The protagonist hands back the admission letter and comments that this is the end of their relationship. Raphael is confused while Rude grabs his backpack, thanks the master for everything, and says it was fun, but from now on, he's out of Ophion. The guildmaster, Raphael, says that he can't do that because he invested so much in him, raised him, and even fed him. Rude, angry, says that's exactly what he wanted to ask him, and questions how he can make this decision without telling him first. The master comments that he knew Rude wouldn't accept it. Rude responds that he obviously wouldn't, and asks why the hell he would agree to go to a school. Raphael comments that he already told him. It's a mission. The protagonist says that he already said he won't go, and the guildmaster questions if he still doesn't understand. He says his heart is as deep as the ocean, and that he doesn't want anything more than to send him to school, even if it's like this. Rude thinks that he doesn't understand anything. Suddenly, Miss Wren appears and says, seriously, questioning what the two of them are up to this time. The guildmaster responds by asking if she could at least knock on the door before entering, since he was in the middle of an important conversation. Rude retorts, saying, important is your butt. Wren, irritated, says that he didn't hear because she definitely knocked, and tells them both to sit down and stop embarrassing the neighborhood. Sometime later, Rude asks if Miss Wren knew about all of this. She says he doesn't need to take it so seriously and that he should just think of it as a bit of fun. The students are going to seem like children to him anyway, and the Duchess's mission won't be that hard. So it's a good opportunity to rest a bit, enjoy school life, and maybe even make some friends his age. She asks if there's anything wrong with that. Rude responds that he doesn't need friends. The guildmaster says that if he really doesn't want to do this, then there's no way. Despite the fact that the Imperial Duchess came to Ophion personally and gave them a special mission, it's fine if they say they can't accept it now. Although, he might get decapitated, but still, it's fine. If that makes him feel better. Miss Wren gives the Guildmaster a slap on the head and tells him to stop talking nonsense. She says to Rude that the master is definitely wrong for making decisions without talking to him first. Moreover, he's going to school through an official admission, and it might be for a long time. So the only thing that matters is for him to decide for himself, and asks what Rude wants to do. The protagonist remains silent and asks if he can just help the Duchess's son. Wren and Raphael are surprised, and quickly the master says that of course, it's not difficult at all. Wren says that, as expected from Ophion's big star, he's amazing, and asks if the school uniform is already prepared, if it would be better to pack his bags first. The master replies that everything is ready. The protagonist wonders if he should resign. Raphael comments that although he told the Duchess that he's a 7th class mage, the school doesn't know that Rude is already an awakened official mage. The protagonist says that means he can't be below there. He replies that it seems to be the case, but asks him not to worry, as nothing dangerous will happen. Rude thinks that's a lot of data. The Guildmaster asks him to just be careful with the teacher's watchful eyes, because they're also official mages. So this mission is essentially a break for the Black Mage, Blow, while also being Rude Cheesy's first official mission. The protagonist thinks that he really is smooth with words. Miss Wren asks if the food there is good, as they need to prepare his clothes carefully, separating them by types. Rude wonders how he can help this kid, because he can't just beat up the kids who mess with him. Seeing the image of a young man, Rude thinks it's an unsettling expression, and as he places the image on the table, wonders if that's the kid who's bullying the second prince. The Guildmaster responds that no, and comments that, in fact, this is the second prince of Ardian himself, the one who's suffering and being called a monster, Leducis Dien Ardian. Sometime later, in the evening in the city, Ben asks how he can't send letters. The woman comments that Helios is very strict when it comes to external items, so without an authentication certificate, they can't accept it. Ben comments that it's just a letter, and the woman apologizes sincerely. The boy asks where he can get this certificate, and she replies that if his older sister is a student, then she must have already made the request, and tells him to ask his parents and come back later. Ben says he can't, because his mother told him not to send letters, and asks if she can do something. The woman comments that she's really sorry, but she can't. Rude appears saying he has an authentication certificate. Ben says, it's Rude, and the protagonist tells her to send the belongings and the letter. The boy asks if he can really do that. Rude calls Ben and comments that he can deliver the letters for him. At Helios Academy, people are agitated, commenting if they heard that the boy is going there today. Some question if it's the one with perfect scores on the admission exam, and a girl responds that it's true. Even the teachers were incredulous. A young man asks why he's going only now after so much time. She says no one knows, but they say he has a chronic illness. People also comment that they're going to try to become friends with him when he arrives. The girl asks if he thinks he'll get good grades just by being his friend. A white-haired girl thinks it's all noise. While some ask what the next class is, others say that Varys is sleeping again, and another comments that he asked to be woken up. A brunette girl shows a pendant and comments that she bought it when she got permission to leave. Suddenly, the second prince arrives in the classroom, and everyone looks back. Everyone falls silent as he walks to the last desk and sits. Some boys are still watching him, when one of them calls him a monster. The white-haired girl thinks it's good that he's quieter now. Meanwhile, the second prince stays at the back of the room, isolated. Sometime earlier, Rude, surprised, asks how he got a perfect score on the admission exam and has a chronic illness. The master doesn't know what to say, while the protagonist asks how he aced a test he'd never taken before and what's up with this chronic illness. The guildmaster comments that it's his ability and that, somehow, things ended up this way. He explains that, as Rude already knows, it's been about a month since the freshman went to Helios. Even his admission certificate was requested a month ago. meaning he should have been there already. But the situation at that time wasn't very favorable. Here are all the school requests asking for him to be sent. The protagonist wonders how long he planned to send him to that school. Raphael says he needed an excuse to buy time, and it had to be something serious for Helios to let it pass. So, the solution he came up with was a handsome, genius, sick guy, and asks if Rude doesn't think that will be fun. Rude gets angry and asks if the master is messing with him. Back to the present, the protagonist hears someone calling Rude Creasy and asks what he's thinking there, since classes are about to start, and it's better for him to go. Rude wonders how he's supposed to carry out missions with such a flashy story. If the certificate was issued a month ago, then the application must have been sent well before that. So, whether or not there's a mission, the master was already trying to send him. He wonders what the master gains by sending him to a school. Looking around, he believes this must be Helios. He feels mana in every corner of the school, which is to be expected from a magical school, and thinks that since he's here, he just needs to finish this mission quickly and leave. The man who is showing him around the school comments that there's no need to be nervous, because students of different ages and statuses are enrolled there, so Rude won't have any problem fitting in, as age and social status don't matter there. The protagonist asks what is important then, and he replies that the most important thing is talent. Normally, freshmen who come here for the first time feel a great happiness imagining themselves as great mages in the future. They imagine that they've been mages from the start, but this is all a disillusionment for them. Entering Helios doesn't mean they've become official mages. In fact, many students can't overcome their own limits and fall into despair. The professor asks, "What about Rude's talent?" The first person to get a perfect score on the admission exam, Rude Chrissy. The protagonist comments that if he can't do it even after trying, he'll have to give up. The professor starts laughing and comments on Rude's sense of humor. Rude thinks that acing the admission exam must be harder than he imagined. The professor comments that Helios is always happy to teach talented people like him, and tells Rude Chrissy that, although he's a little late compared to the other students, he welcomes him to Helios. Special Magic School. Helios, a place where those with the talent to sense and use mana are educated with the goal of becoming true mages. Mages who will carry a badge. Based on their abilities, students are divided into advanced classes. Here is intermediate classes, Claude, and beginner classes, Eden. Freshmen begin in the Eden classes, and through promotion exams that are held annually, they can move up to the next class. Rude thinks that's what he heard, at least. The professor says that this is Rude Chrissy. He's joining them a little late due to health issues, and asks them not to make jokes about him just because he's a little late and to try to fit in. The protagonist remains silent when the professor tells Mr. Chrissy to go ahead and introduce himself. Rude walks to the front and with a serious expression says it's a pleasure to meet them. People start wondering if that's all or if it wasn't a bit too short. Rude thinks he found the second son of the Ardian Duke's household, the monster who's being bullied, Leducius Dien Ardian, but wonders why he's there all alone like that. The professor comments that, in that case, Mr. Chrissy should sit in that empty seat. He doesn't seem weak, but apparently got injured and is being called a real monster. Still, he wonders why he's exactly called monster. First, he needs to get a better sense of things, so he decides to wait a bit and observe. Suddenly, someone greets him. A young man with blue hair says, "It's a pleasure to meet him." The genius boy. Rude asks, "What?" And he questions if Rude isn't the one who aced the entrance exam, meaning he's a genius, and asks how old he is because Varus is 17. The protagonist replies that he's 15. Varus says he knew Rude was younger and introduces himself as Dio Varus, but says he can just call him Dio. Rude responds, "Okay, sir." Varus says he doesn't need to be formal because if they're in the same class, then they're friends regardless of age. The professor calls Mr. Dio Varus and comments that, as the one who came last among the people at this school, he understands that Dio would like to be friends with Mr. Chrissy, but asks him to save the conversation for later. Varus says that wasn't necessary, Professor. Rude thinks that for now, he'll just keep to himself and observe quietly. Sometime later, people start asking the protagonist several things, like if they can just call him Rude, where he came from, if he has a private tutor. Rude thinks he came there pretending to be a perfect student with some kind of illness, so he thought it would be fine if he just stayed quiet, but he wonders why they're so sociable and interested in each other. During the break, another large group stops him and asks how old he is. As he walks, the same thing happens. The protagonist, downcast, wonders if it's because it's his first day. Meanwhile, people ask if he's feeling okay or if something happened. Diovaris tells everyone to stop a bit and give him space, commenting that he was chosen to guide him around the school. Some ask if it was Professor Heil who chose him, and comment that they also want to go. Rude looks to the side and notices that the second prince's desk is empty, wondering where he went. Suddenly, Dio pulls him by the shoulder and calls Chrissy to go with him, calling him his friend. Rude wonders, friend? And thinks about who decided that. Sometime later, Dio says that the school is quite big, so it's easy to get lost, but he'll get used to it soon. He says that, despite this, it shouldn't be a problem for Rude and asks if it's okay to call him Rude. The protagonist replies, "Do as you wish." Varys comments that he was really nervous when he first got there and says that Rude must know how hard it is to enter if you're not a noble. Still, after being accepted, Dio thought that would be the end of his problems and the beginning of a peaceful new life. Peaceful? In the end, nothing changed because he came last in the exam. Dio says that Rude is amazing, the first student who really aced it. He's definitely his opposite. The protagonist replies that he just got lucky and comments that he doesn't think Varys is nothing to sneeze at either. After all, out of all the students there, he managed to pull off the feat of coming last. It's incredible. Not just anyone can do that. Dios is in disbelief and asks if Rude can say that with such a serious face, and wonders if he's mocking him, laughing because he came last, right? The protagonist replies that he's not. Sometime later, Varys comments that this is the place he will frequent the most, the main library of Helios. Rude comments that it's really big, and Dios replies that the amount of resources there is incredible. He asks if Rude is seeing those things. Rude asks if he's talking about the monospheres. Varys says, that's right, those spheres have an isolation spell. When you sit down, any external sound will automatically be blocked, so you can focus solely on your book. And that's why they can speak freely like this. Varys questions if it's not incredible. Rude thinks that the maintenance costs must also be incredible. Dios says that the library has 4 floors in total, but for now, they can only access the first. The protagonist asks why. Varys says that it's one of the disadvantages of being in the lowest class Eden. Suddenly, 3 people on the upper floor call Dios a failure with blue hair and ask if he's in Professor Heil's classes. Varys replies yes, that's right. The protagonist, observing the yellow-haired wizard's clothing, thinks it's the symbol of Harry's and wonders if he's from the most advanced class. The corn-colored hair says he remembers him and asks how that guy from his class is doing and how the monster is. Dios nervously comments that he's fine. He replies that it's a pity and says that it's okay. He can return to his duties. Varys sighs and comments that he thought his heart would jump out of his chest. Rude asks why he got so nervous and wonders if it's because he's from the most advanced class. Dios says that he's a pure soul who hasn't experienced social hierarchies firsthand yet. The protagonist asks what he's talking about. Varys comments that he will tell him a story full of blood, sweat, and tears that will help him survive in Helios. So he better listen carefully. First, never go against the members of the advanced class, Helios. They are individuals with incredible abilities and talents and are recognized by the school. There are fewer than 20 of them, but one alone is comparable to 100 from Eden, so they have privileges equal to their abilities. One mistake in your peaceful life at this school will be over. Rude thinks that, in the end, they are not just amateurs who haven't awakened yet. Dios comments that, for perspective, there are over 400 students at this school, but only 20 Harrys. To them, the Harrys are like stars in the sky. The protagonist says he understands and asks what the second thing is. Varys approaches and says, "The second, of all the students in Harry's, be especially careful with Chevelle von Hadelio." Rude asks who that is. He replies that it's the blonde one they just saw. He's someone the protagonist should be cautious with. It would be better if he avoids him completely. The chances of meeting a Harry's are minimal, but if that happens, it's better to be careful. They are very skilled, but their personalities are kind of... Rude interrupts, asking if he meant jerks. Dio starts laughing quickly and loudly, and looking around, he questions if he's gone mad and asks, "What if someone hears?" He tells him to listen carefully because Rude needs to know this story. Chevelle von Hadelio, as the precious next Marquis of the Hadelio family, is especially famous among the students of Harry's. It must be because of his family, but even the professors don't dare mess with him. Dios heard that when someone catches his attention, he makes sure that person suffers to the end. One wrong word he hears, and boom, your life here will become a living hell. So Rude needs to be as cautious as possible. The protagonist asks, "But what's with that nickname monster?" Varys says he'll find out soon, but let's just say it's an example of what happens if Hadelio takes an interest in someone. The protagonist asks if he can tell him more, but is interrupted by Dios pulling him away, saying that enough with this nonsense. There are still many places to see. After that, Varys takes Rude around various parts of the school for him to observe, and they keep going until the end of the day, seeing all the places in the school. Later, Rude is at the Helios Academy reception, waiting. He sighs and thinks that this was more of an adventure than a school tour, and wonders if he would walk all day on his first day. And he thinks that guy has already been there for a month and knows a lot. If he put the effort he makes for strolling into his studies, he wouldn't be the last of all. Then the receptionist appears, apologizing and asking if he took too long. The protagonist says no. She asks if his name is Rude Creasy, and he answers yes. The receptionist says that the luggage arrived on time. As for his room, he can use a temporary one until they find a roommate for Rude. The protagonist asks if this hasn't been done yet. She replies that unfortunately, no. With the exception of students in the advanced class, all rooms need to be shared by 2 people. Currently, no one in his class has an available space, so they need to make some adjustments. It will be resolved in a few days, so he doesn't need to worry too much. Rude thinks, based on the information given by the Duchess, and says that there's a spare place, asking if there isn't one. The receptionist is surprised and asks what he said. The protagonist says, "Leducis dien artian." He heard that he's alone in the room, right? Sometime later, in front of the room door, he is staring at his key and remembers the receptionist saying that, since he insisted so much, here it is. But if he changes his mind, he should go talk to her. Rude thinks it was quite difficult to convince her. Now, it's better to go in and see the main subject of this mission face to face. The protagonist knocks on the door and no one answers, so he wonders if he's not there. Upon opening the door, he's surprised to see how large the room is and thinks it's too big for 2 people. It's even excessive. Rude looks closer and realizes he's sleeping, wondering if he's really sleeping at this hour. The protagonist pulls the blanket from the bed and sees Leducis there, thinking he's sleeping so peacefully, wondering if he could do the same in his place. He wonders if he should be relieved, but decides it's better to unpack his bags soon. Leducis opens his eyes and is surprised to see someone in his room. Rude notices and turns around, but Leducis pretends to be asleep again, while the protagonist stands silently looking at him. Later, in the evening in the hallway, an assistant hears someone saying that he can't keep calling him that, as he has his reasons, and he knows it takes time to avoid the tower's eyes. Of course, the contract will be fulfilled if he gives him a little more time. The assistant, seeing a shadow, is surprised and runs quickly, opening the door and calling for Professor Heil, asking what's going on. Heil asks what he means. The assistant comments that he thought he saw a shadow and is sure he saw one next to him. Suddenly, the assistant notices something and looking up is surprised, but the shadow quickly moves toward him. Heil sighs and comments that the contract will be fulfilled at all costs. The next day, Rude wakes up and thinks he overslept, and, as expected, he's not there. He wonders when Leducis left. No matter how much he tried to talk, Leducis only pretended to sleep, and he wonders if he should have waited a little longer before making him his roommate, as he's much more cautious than he expected. It seems like everyone wakes up early there. The protagonist, looking out the window, sees a crowd gossiping, and soon everyone starts looking in his room's direction. Rude gets confused as people begin asking each other if they heard that the guy from Professor Hyle's class, the one who aced the exam, is apparently in the same room as that monster. Some start asking if it's a Heres, while others comment that no, from what they heard, he chose that room by his own will. The protagonist wonders why there's so much gossip just because they're in the same room, and he believes the situation might be worse than he thought. So going unnoticed is out of the question. With that, Rude decides to take advantage of the situation and resolve everything quickly. Suddenly, the protagonist sees from above a group of students pulling Leducis, telling him that he already said it's that way and ordering him to go faster, while some question what he's looking at and if the monster won't lift his head. The people around wonder if they should call a professor. A young man tells the other to stay quiet, as they don't know what will happen if they get involved. And that's not the first time. It's better to just leave it alone and asks what's the worst that could happen. Rude watches silently from afar. The students push Leducis and question when he's going to understand, commenting that they thought they made it clear. A monster like him doesn't deserve to walk through the main square, saying they've already warned him to stay out of sight and slink around like a rat. Even so, he insists on ruining the day by showing his face and asking if he's not going to respond. The leader of the group gives a small, sarcastic smile and asks what's the point of being born into a prestigious family if he's nothing but a monster, as if the Ardian duchy doesn't care about him. From what they heard, his older brother, who is already training to inherit the family, goes around saying he has no brother, so they question if that doesn't mean he's been completely abandoned. They say he's pitiful. Valiant comments that, in the end, he's just grateful that his family doesn't care about him, and then he starts stepping on his hand. One of the other young men tells him to calm down, as Manon said not to hurt him. Valiant says he doesn't care, he's just a monster anyway, and wonders when else they'll have a chance to step on the esteemed son of the duchy. Suddenly, a book hits Valiant on the head, leaving everyone surprised. Valiant falls to the ground while the others ask where that book came from. Rude, on top of the roof, comments that the book is his and asks if they could return it. He then jumps to the ground, leaving the young men confused. Leducis, seeing this, is surprised. Rude lands on some grass, saying he's sorry as he thought he was aiming for the ground. The other young man asks who he is and what he thinks he's doing. The protagonist says it's ironic that he's asking him that. The young man asks what he means and charges at Rude, saying, "How dare he, little shit from Eden?" Rude Chrissy quickly grabs the young man's hand, who wonders what kind of strength this is and gets confused. Rude gives a slight smile and comments that he hit first. He then punches him, knocking him out. Leducis, witnessing this, can't believe the protagonist knocked out all three of them so easily. Rude thinks they're weaker than he expected and then goes to look for Leducis, but he quickly runs away. The protagonist calls for Leducis, but he says not to come closer, that he shouldn't. As Leducis runs, two girls see this and, looking to the side, are surprised. The two approach the three students and ask if they are okay. Meanwhile, Rude hides, remembering the word from the monster, he shouldn't. Sometime later, in the middle of the central square, people start whispering about the protagonist. Rude thinks the reactions are quite different from yesterday and wonders where Leducis went. Maybe he should have gone after him. Suddenly, Varus appears behind him and grabs him by the neck, running off with him. In a warehouse, Dios asks Rude if it's true that he's in the same dorm as that monster, actually with the Ardian master. The protagonist responds that yes. Varus, concerned, comments that he should have explained things better yesterday. The first thing he needs to do is change rooms. Rude asks why. Deus responds, What do you mean, why? This is to ensure that Chrissy has a peaceful school life. He doesn't seem to understand the situation he's in, so he better listen carefully. And asks if the protagonist remembers what he said earlier, that if he's marked, his life will turn into hell. The monster that Chevelle mentioned yesterday is the Ardian Master. Rude questions if it's really true. Dios asks if he doesn't understand. It was him who bothered Chevelle and was marked by him. The one called a monster and ignored by everyone is the Ardian Master. The protagonist says he understands perfectly that the one behind this is Chevelle von Hadelio and asks, what about him? Varys gets confused. Rude says if he thinks it's right that Leducis is called a monster and ignored just because someone decided it should be that way. Dio says it's really unfair, but the protagonist puts his hand on Varys' shoulder and comments that then they agree. Dios gets a little confused. Rude turns his face to the side and asks Leducis what he thinks. Varys asks what he's talking about. Leducis stands up and walks out from behind the boxes. Dios is surprised and asks how long he's been there. The second prince of Ardian starts walking out without saying anything, and, as he walks, trips, and falls. Dios and Rude stay silent. The protagonist tries to talk to him, but Varys covers his mouth and whispers, questioning what he thinks he's doing, explaining that nothing will change even if he tries to help, and that in the worst-case scenario, Rude could end up like him. The protagonist says that before that, he wants to ask something. Dio says he's being serious. Leduci stays silent and starts walking again, but Rude quickly pulls him by the shirt and comments that they need to talk. He replies that it's not necessary and keeps walking. The protagonist gets irritated and wonders what that was. Varys calls Rude and asks what his deal is and why he wanted to talk to him. Chrissy says, "Isn't it obvious? They sleep in the same room." Dios tells him to change rooms then, and asks if he doesn't realize from his reaction. Rude says it's strange and asks why they call him a monster, and what happened in just 1 month for everyone to start calling him that. As Leducis walks to his room, people question why he's still going there, or say that if they were him, they would have left already, calling him a monster. Hearing all this, he starts to remember the past, when he was younger and someone lost their life in his arms, and a voice asked him if it was his fault, but he soon wakes from his own thoughts as he stands behind the door to the room. Back in the warehouse, Deo says he has no idea why the Ardian Master is called a monster. Rude, in disbelief, says it's fine and walks away. Varys tells him to calm down and says he knows, just doesn't know the details, and explains that everything started with Chevelle, but it wasn't so bad at first. Ardian only started being called a monster after the incident. Rude asks what this incident was. Dio says he only heard rumors, but shortly after Ardian arrived at Helios, several Eden students gathered in the library to study, and on that day, and at that place, Master Ardian is said to have turned into a threatening monster. The rumors say he had 3 eyes, fur, and even 8 arms. The protagonist questions if Varys is joking, because if this is a joke, he's going to hit him now. Dios comments that that's why he said he doesn't know the details, only what the rumors say. Rude wonders if he really turned into a monster, finding the story quite bizarre. Dios comments that since the library is closed, it can be assumed that something really happened there, but it's better to leave this subject aside and put him in another dorm. As everyone in Eden already knows, it's just a matter of time until this information reaches the Harrys. The protagonist says he noticed that people's reactions to him were very different from yesterday. Dios responds, "So you see." Rude asks if he doesn't change dorms, Varys will avoid him too. Dios gets confused while the protagonist insists, saying that he won't, because that's not how it works. Varys, downcast, says he can believe that. Sometime later, while the protagonist and Dios walk, everyone keeps staring at them. Rude comments that the commotion is still the same as yesterday, but the reactions are very different. Varys, with a trembling voice, comments that a watermelon on the head would be less noticeable, and asks what the protagonist is thinking, questioning if he plans to challenge the Harrys. Rude remains silent for a moment, and answers that of course not. Dios asks why it took him so long to respond, and why he's so determined to help Master Ardian. The protagonist replies that it's not exactly help, and thinks that, before anything else, this is a mission. As they walk to the classroom, Rude sees Ardian sitting alone, and thinks that even if nothing changes, if he does nothing, he'll just be a coward who tolerated this injustice. He's a lonely boy, being called a monster, and suffering a lot because of it. The protagonist calls Dio, who responds asking what's up. Rude says that now they're in the same boat. Dio gets confused. Leducis Dian Ardian, regardless of how much they say social status doesn't matter in Helios. Dios tells people that he wants to change his seat and asks if they can move a little to make space. The House of Ardian is not something to be underestimated. Things would never have ended like this if he had made it clear where he comes from. The students, surprised by this, wonder what they're doing, while others just watch silently. Why do they do nothing? Why do they stay quiet in the face of so much hate against him? Well, he'll have to figure that out with time. In this way, Dios and Rude put their desks next to Leducis, surprising him. Sometime later, Professor Heil comments that, according to ancient books left by past civilizations, wizards are the lions of God. They're also described as great saviors, purifying polluted lands and defeating cruel monsters. Well, this description isn't as applicable nowadays, as there are mediocre and unprepared wizards who obtain their marks illegally and walk around thinking they can act as true wizards. However, this doesn't negate the fact that wizards are saviors. Even today, wizards are the only ones capable of facing monsters. And, as Professor Heil's class continues, some students start looking back. After the class, all the students, surprised, keep staring. Rude calls for Leducis, but he remains silent. The protagonist keeps looking at him and starts calling him out loud, telling him to answer. Dios gets up from his desk, calls Rude, and says he's starving. He asks, "So what?" But Varus calls him to go to the cafeteria to grab something. In the cafeteria, Dios tells Rude to think about it and asks if he knows, right, that nothing will change if it's just the two of them. Besides, the person in question is quite indifferent to all of this, which is another reason for them not to get involved. He asks if he didn't see. Leducis doesn't care if they're close to him or not. Rude says he doesn't know, because he didn't seem that way to him, and remembers that in class, when he was bored, he noticed that Leducis's book was upside down. He had paid a lot of attention to their presence. Varus says that, no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't find it ideal, because the friends who used to joke with him don't even look at him anymore. Rude comments that he's still there. Dios says he's not joking, it's not too late yet. The protagonist says that so his argument is that things won't change with just the two of them, right? Varus questions what he means. Rude comments that in this case, they'll need to recruit more friends. He tells the protagonist to calm down. Suddenly, a group of boys walks in their direction. Rude, noticing, says that he thinks it's too late to back down. Adric Vorn approaches and asks if he is Rude Chrissy. The protagonist replies yes and asks, "So what?" The young man who was beaten earlier gets irritated and says that this Eden stared him in the eye. Adric Vorn calls Rude Chrissy and says he would like him to come with him. Sometime later, in the central square, Rude and Dios follow them. When they arrive, Adric Vorn tells his thugs they can leave. The young man who was beaten by Rude gets confused and asks what he said. He replies that he told them to leave. The young man sighs deeply and says that he's right. The protagonist thinks this is Adric and remembers that he was with Chevelle von Hadelio last time. Adric asks if Rude knows why he brought him there. The protagonist replies that he has no idea and asks if Adric brought him there without knowing the reason. He answers that he was told Rude Chrissy arrived after everyone else, and it seems that's true. He comments that Rude is a fearless boy and says he'll get straight to the point. It'll be better for Rude if he stays away from that damned monster. The protagonist asks what monster and comments that he doesn't really know what he's talking about, wondering if there's a monster there in Helios. Adric says he doesn't like people who play dumb and asks if that's not a shame, questioning if Rude is trying to feel better by taking in that worm. whatever his reason, he better stop, because everything exists for a reason, and tells him to stop meddling in matters he doesn't understand and start taking care of his own life, because if he gets close to him, Rude will only have things to lose and nothing to gain. The protagonist asks if that's advice. Adric responds advice and says no, and getting close to him with a serious look, he affirms it's a warning. At dusk, Dios and Rude are at the edge of the central square wall. The protagonist wonders, a warning, huh? Varys comments that if they insisted on coming to them, maybe they should stop. Rude asks if they should. Dio stays silent for a moment and then says to forget it and asks what Rude is going to do now. The protagonist says that first they need to find an ally, but acknowledges that it's easier said than done, so it's better to think about how to do that later. For now, the best thing is to focus on gathering information. To start, they need to figure out what happened, and Dio should check if there's anyone who can help them. Varys asks how he plans to find out what really happened. Rude says that the quickest way is to ask Leducis himself, right? But first, he needs to have a real conversation with him, and after that, he'll think of a solution to the problem, even if that solution is going against Chevelle or turning this school upside down. Rude thinks that he's not around and wonders where Leducis usually hangs out. The principal calls for Mr. Leducis and comments that she will ask one more time, questioning if he really isn't having any problems in his school life. He answers that, yes, everything is fine. The principal says that, as he must know, she and Dana are colleagues, so if there's any problem, he can talk to her, and comments that if Leducis really doesn't want help, then there's nothing they can do. Meanwhile, in the school hallway, Rude stops a student and asks if he's seen Leducis. The student, startled, replies that he's never even heard that name. People start commenting on why he's looking for that monster, while some say not to even look too much. The protagonist thinks that they can't even talk about it. Suddenly, a girl says that if he's looking for the monster, she thinks she saw him going to the West Warehouse. Leducis was carrying monospheres, so she's sure it was him. Rude thanks her. A young man calls out to Isle and asks why she spoke to him. Others question what if she gets caught up in all of this. Suddenly, Rude turns around, goes to her, and says, by the way, that he's not looking for a monster, he's looking for Leducis, and walks away again. Isle thinks he's a funny guy. The protagonist thinks that to get to the warehouse, he'll need to pass through there, so he'll probably end up seeing him from there. Rude wonders if he already passed, and he didn't see him, but soon he spots him down there. The protagonist is about to call him, but thinks it's better to wait and wonders if it's worth calling from there, since there are so many people around. He remembers that Adric said it was a warning. He ponders for a moment and suddenly lets out a loud shout calling for Leducis. Ardian, hearing this, gets confused. Rude greets him from afar and asks him to wait right there. Upon hearing this, Leducis starts running away quickly. Rude, in disbelief, thinks that he's run away again and begins to remember what Leducis Ardian had said earlier. There's no need for this. The protagonist thinks that's fine. Then, this is how it's going to be, huh? And jumps down from the height without getting hurt, leaving others surprised. He thinks that, in this case, he's going after him and starts running after Leducis, calling out to him and asking him to stop right there. People are surprised by this and start asking if Rin saw that, commenting that the boy jumped down from up there. Meanwhile, Rude keeps running after Leducis through the school, and everyone starts wondering what's going on and why they're running. The protagonist thinks that they unintentionally drew all the attention, but other than that, that guy runs very fast, and he can't get close. This has escalated too much, but for now, he'll focus on catching up with him. Leducis realizes he's being caught and quickly grabs a monosphere, running at high speed. The protagonist thinks that he used mana and comments that it's good, but then immediately gets hit by a monosphere to the forehead. Leducis, near the fence, says he's sorry. Rude questions sorry and comments that if that's the case, he better stop running and asks why they're playing tag like this. Leducis replies that it's because he started chasing him. The protagonist says that he was the one who started running and escaping first. Prince Ardian says that Rude called him. Rude questions what he said and tells him to speak louder because he can't hear anything. He calls for Leducis again, but sees Chevelle's group below him. Chevelle notices his presence and gets furious. The protagonist says that finally, he shouldn't run away now, and that they should talk. Ardian says loudly for him not to come closer, leaving Rude surprised, and then, trembling, repeats that he shouldn't come closer. The protagonist says that he understands, picks up the manosphere from the ground, and asks what he thought Rude would say, throwing the ball at his head, hitting him and leaving him confused. He pulls Ardian by the shirt and comments on what he'll do if he comes closer, glaring at him, while Prince Ardian looks surprised. Rude says that it's not that he should do anything, he just wants them to have a little chat. Suddenly, Chevelle appears behind them, asking, "Talk." Leducis, upon hearing his voice, is shocked. Chevelle places his foot on his back and comments on what kind of topic someone could possibly have with a monster. He then calls Rude a kid from Eden and asks him to answer one thing. What does he plan to talk about with this thing? Rude Chrissy quickly charges at Chevelle, pushing him down again. Leducis and Chevelle can't believe it, while Rude, in silence, watches him. Chevelle's companions go to him calling out. The protagonist laughs and comments that it seems like he doesn't have much balance. Leducis, still in disbelief, ends up dropping the manospheres on the ground. Rude calls Leducis to go somewhere quieter, but suddenly Chevelle appears again with his hand on his head. Irritated, he asks if the protagonist wants to lose his life and calls him a kid from Eden. Rude replies no, that he wants to live, so it's better to let go of him already. Chevelle calls him a bastard and asks if Rude knows who he is to be talking like that. The protagonist says, of course he knows, and affirms that he's Chevelle Van, and then asks, and what else? Because he forgot. He then grabs Chevelle's hand and questions if he's not from the great high-level class, Hieris, the ones who are supposed to be so amazing. Chevelle gets angry and asks what the hell this is, and where such a rude worm like him came from. Chevelle calls for Anna. She, upon hearing, throws a necklace in the air, and the corn-colored hair catches it. Chevelle calls Rude and says that he's not generous enough to let rudeness slide, so he puts on his necklace and asserts that it's better for him to use this opportunity to learn that if he doesn't stay in his place and keeps getting involved with Hieris, this is what happens. The protagonist asks if that's a monostone and believes it's of high quality, wondering if Chevelle is saying he's going to use magic with that. Chevelle, holding the monostone, says that now it's no use regretting or being afraid, telling him to watch carefully the magic of the future great mage Chevelle, and says he'll show him the difference between them. Rude asks where Leducis is going. He answers that he's going to find a teacher. Rude says it's fine, that he can go call someone, but Ardian comments that no, he's the one who needs to go. The protagonist insists saying that he should go. Leducis says no, because it would be better if Rude went. Chevelle, irritated, asks if the two of them are arguing in the middle of his monologue and comments that it seems like they still haven't understood the situation they're in, so he begins to recite something. Raphael, Cruz Fel Merica. Rude thinks it's a spell and, not wanting things to escalate too much, believes it's better to leave before he gets caught, but Ardian pushes him with his hand and asks if he didn't tell him to step away, telling him to run quickly because he's going to do his best to handle the situation. The protagonist thinks that this guy tried to look cool, but in reality, he's scared out of his mind. Chevelle says it's a pathetic scene and comments that it seems like everyone is losing their minds, claiming that Leducis is talking nonsense in front of him, which is crazy, and wonders if he's gone mad just because there's one idiot giving him attention. Leducis responds that that's not it, that he has nothing to do with it, but Chevelle uses the fence as leverage and quickly charges at him, telling him to shut up and throwing him to the ground. Leducis says that all he wants is for the nightmare to never end because he's going to show him hell. At that moment, he starts seeing his little sister, who tells him to look and says that the flower is beautiful, asking if it's not, but soon her image begins to distort, and she appears all bruised and demonic. Leducis starts begging him to stop with it. Chevelle stays silent, but quickly Rude charges at him, delivering a punch to the back of his neck and then running over to check if Leus is okay. Chevelle, furious, asks if the protagonist has lost his mind and questions who he thinks he's shoving. Rude, seriously, asks what he did to Leus. Chevelle replies that the monster clearly forgot what he did, so he just gave him a little reminder. The protagonist wonders, what did he do? And Chevelle says that a monster who doesn't know his place must be punished, and that Rude also seems to not know his place, so he's going to punish him too. The blonde boy asks if he has a memory he never wants to relive, or perhaps a terrible fear he never wants to experience, and assures that whichever it is, he will show it at that moment. The MC reflects on this, and since he is starting to have an idea of who was responsible for everyone believing that Leus turned into a monster in the library, he wonders if he will really have to deal with that guy. At that moment, a teacher comes running, asking what he's doing and orders them to stop immediately. He gets irritated by this interference and tells the MC that it's his lucky day. She arrives running at high speed and sees the two boys on the ground. Meanwhile, Rude, pretending to have been beaten, just thinks that it's still not the time to cause trouble. Then he looks to the side and tries to understand what happened between Leus and Chevelle. Right after that, gossip is already spreading through the school, and the students are looking in the MC's direction. The teacher questions him since he heard that he jumped from one of the school floors and wants to know if it's true. Rude replies no. Heil, smiling, asks about the rumors of him running through the school after Leus like two lunatics. He replies that he never did anything like that. The teacher laughs, since he thought the same thing, but the students listening by the door think it's all a lie since everyone saw it with their own eyes. Heil tells Rude that he only entered the school a month later because of his condition, and therefore believes it's unlikely he could have done the things in the rumors. Only then does the MC remember this supposed illness he has, and the teacher asks if it's not true. He replies yes, but in reality, he had already forgotten about it. Heil just asks him to be careful, since he could end up in a complicated situation if he got sick again. She can't wait so long for him to recover, and warns that if he builds a bad reputation with the Heres while being in Eden, his school life will be affected. After that, he leaves the office and finds it annoying since, in the end, he couldn't really talk to Leus. At that moment, Dio appears running with a tired face and starts asking what happened, and if it's true he fought Chevelle. He replies they just met, but his classmate asks if the rumor spreading around the school is true. He asks what rumor that is, and the ocean-haired boy says the gossip is that he got beaten up by Chevelle while playing with Leus, but then changes the subject, asking if he's really okay and if he didn't get hurt. The MC replies he's fine, but with his shaky voice starts talking about Leus, and a silence falls over the hallway. Dio gets scared by this, and asks if the boy is dead since he made that suspense. But he replies that he's alive, and asks why the hell Leus being dead was the first thing that crossed his empty head. Then he asks to leave. Dio asks leave to where, and he replies, they're going to see Leus. They open the warehouse door, and seeing a bunch of boxes, the ocean-haired boy says the kid went to the infirmary a short while ago, so it might be worth checking that room. The MC isn't sure about it, but Dio insists that there's no one there until he gets scared looking forward since Leus is clearly hiding there. Rude calls for him and asks what he's looking for on the ground. He doesn't say anything, and the MC asks to talk while there's still a chance and asks if he wants a candy. He sits next to him and asks him to forget the rumors about turning into a monster and just explain why Chevelle keeps calling him a monster. Leus starts sweating cold and says it's none of his business and tells him to get lost. Then, he raises his voice and tells him to stop caring about him and to stop paying attention since he just wants peace. The MC is surprised by this reaction, as is Dio. Rude asks if the plan is to live hidden there while everyone calls him a monster. He replies yes, and, with his hand on his face, says the reason is because he really is a monster. The MC just extends his hand and gives him something. Leus sees that it's candy, but gets startled since the MC said he would ask Chevelle directly if he doesn't tell him, and with a smile on his face says he needs to know why they call him a monster because he's curious and therefore asks not to worry. Leus simply can't believe what he's hearing. Sometime later, still at school, Someone reports to Chevelle that the name of the boy he found is Rude Chrissy, and that he joined the school 1 month late due to a disease that has made his body weak since childhood. He asks if this is some kind of joke since when he found him, he was way too energetic to be real. The girl says the MC is in the same dorm as the so-called monster, and even says the name of the blue-haired boy, Dio, since they're in the same class. She also says there's something interesting since Rude did something remarkable, like being the first to get a perfect score on the entrance exam. Chevelle hears all this and smiles, since it makes sense in his head why such a young boy is so cocky, and he questions whether he's walking around with his head held high just because he aced a little test. The girl asks what they're going to do, and he replies that they have to make sure Rude doesn't rise in the hierarchy at all. The magic stone on the table starts to release smoke until it dissipates. The smoke goes behind a bush and stays as if it's observing the two until it disappears and returns to its owner. It was Tessie who was intrigued by what she heard. At that moment, the princess starts calling for her, and her guard asks her not to play with the food. The woman puts a cookie in her mouth and tells the princess that there she is not Tessie, but Professor Rowell. After that, already at night, a communication stone asks how Rude is doing at school and whether he has made any friends. The MC replies that it doesn't matter and says the target of the mission doesn't want his help since he keeps saying to leave him alone, and he adds that if the boy wants that so much, there's no miracle he can do. His master thinks that's cool and asks again about the friends he made. He asks if he should return since he's talking nonsense, and his master apologizes and asks if he really believes the boy doesn't want any help. Rude replies that he's not sure, even though he knows something is happening that nobody knows about. He also said that he finds the students at that school really weird, something like they've all been hypnotized to ignore Leus and call him a monster. He points to Chevelle Hadelio as the one behind that situation. His master finds the surname Hadelio curious. The MC asks if by any chance he knows him, and his master replies that he knows him well. He explains that Hadelio is a house that has produced high-level mages for generations, and the current head of the household is the Marquis, who is very active among the nobles of the imperial castle. Then, after saying that, he thinks he might know what's going on. He explains that the Marquis and the Duke are famous for the grudges they hold against each other, and maybe the students are in conflict because of the situation between the houses. The MC hears that and says he's not sure, even though they seem to hate each other a lot, but he says that from what he noticed, it's Leus who's suffering in a one-sided way. His master asks if by chance the boy did something wrong, like stealing Chevelle's girlfriend or something like that. Rude thinks such a vague thought is absurd, and his master just laughs and says he'll do some research, but asks not to take it too seriously, making it clear that the mission is important, but he wants him to enjoy academic life, like making friends. But the MC sees that some silly talk is about to start and puts his hand on the stone to end the communication. He takes a deep breath and gets up. He also starts wondering whether the two houses really are in conflict, but decides that for now, he will just observe. The next day, in another place, Elzabel is standing on the balcony, and he tries to understand why Ruby Monter chose that place to stay. He said the girl really has no sense of things, since if she wants to blend in well, she needs to do something about her personality. Then, he takes a deep breath, puts his hand on the door, and goes inside. Then he tries to please her by saying he is back. However, it was a fish lying there in front of him. He takes a deep breath since Ruby Monter is not there. The fish says the girl went out briefly. Elzabel finds that funny, guessing that his mistress is interested in the human world. The monster asks if he swam there by chance. He answers yes, and that he even found several creatures similar to him. The fish warns that this is not something pleasant to say, besides pointing out an unbearable smell of the sea, and for that reason, tells him to get out of there. Elzabel is outraged by this since that monster smells the most like fish for being one. He then sits down and asks why he is in that form, since as far as he remembers, Ruby Monter told him to keep the human form to get used to it. The fish answers yes, and says it is suffocating. He finds that funny since what is suffocating is being locked in there, and since they are in the human realm, he tells him to have fun. A monster makes it clear that unlike a certain someone, he is not there to play. Elzabel finds it interesting to hear that. so he grabs the fish's body and throws it straight into the sea, telling him to go play at once. After falling into the water, he asks if it is not refreshing. Gamot appears in his human form and angrily warns that he is tired of Elzebel's arrogant and rude behavior. He says that the little fish's attitude never changed and continues to be annoying as always. At that moment, Ruby Monter arrives on the balcony and sees the mess of her two subordinates in the water. She asks what the hell they are doing since she told them to behave, then opens a piece of paper and, staring fixedly, realizes that her infiltration in Helio Magic School was successful. Back at the school, a staff member comes shouting for Professor Rowell, but the one who turns is Heil. She is embarrassed and asks if he saw Professor Rowell by chance. He replies he didn't see anyone, and the woman is embarrassed. He continues what he is doing and fiddles with the seals on the floor. The woman approaches and asks if that is the teleportation magic circle they will use on the Eden exam, and asks if the professor made it alone since it is quite complex. He answers yes, and she comments that she heard that they will use the tower's training room for that test, and admits that a teleportation magic circle that size is incredible. Heil smiles and says that even so, since it is the first exercise of the year, they need to do their best to ensure everything goes smoothly. She says she expected nothing less from the famous professor, who is a master of teleportation circles. Sometime later, someone arrives banging on the MC's desk. He asks what that book is, and Dio replies, it is the information he worked himself to death to get. He admits to being impressed since he got all that in one day. Cloudhair says it was difficult since all the students avoided him. Rude says there is a lot there and asks if everyone on that list can stand against Chevelle. He replies that it is not exactly that, since for now, he only researched who the nobles are and organized them by grades. The MC makes a dumbfounded face, and his friend asks what that face is about since he worked hard to get it. He answers it is not that, since he does not know if those grades will be useful. At a nearby table, two girls are watching, and Rin starts looking at them. Her friend notices and asks why she is looking, and she answers, it's nothing. Dio makes it clear to the MC that definitely that note will be useful. He decides to look into it better, and the first name he sees is Yutiarien Maria Canciole. He soon realizes that just by the fancy name, it's clear she is the only one with royal blood in Helio and is a direct successor. Dio reinforces that the girl is called Princess, besides receiving special treatment, and the school even approved that she have a guardian with her at all times. And he believes that if the Empire's princess is truly untouchable even by the teachers, then not even Chevelle could do anything. However, he realizes he is saying this out loud and quickly hides his face, praying no one heard. However, the students imagine that they definitely heard it, and since he was speaking so proudly, they start snooping around, wanting to know what the two are up to, and comment that since Rude arrived at school, they haven't had a single peaceful day. Another says she hates being in the same classroom as him and is afraid of being affected by his actions, stating that if the monster hadn't been treated that way, the two would definitely find a way to be his lackeys. Rin tries to observe the MC until he looks forward, and she quickly hides her embarrassment. He finds her reaction strange, but asks Dio again who the second person is. He replies that the second is named Lapis Yuan Nuadli, only son of the Nuadli Duchy, who also has a lot of influence in that school. He is the son of the Duke, but the difference is that he is the only heir. He says it was hard information to get and reveals that Master Nuadli and Chevelle entered Helios at the same time and believes their relationship must have been bad. Rude finds that interesting to know and believes he will have to make that boy sympathize with them since he hates Chevelle. Dio says that might be true, but there's a small problem since Master Lapis hasn't been able to leave Eden since he entered the school. The MC finds that strange and asks why. He answers that he believes it's because he's not skilled enough to advance to the elite class. He explains that the boy has a high level in magical theory, but his practical applications leave much to be desired, and even though he has no talent in magic, he is heir to a duchy, is popular, and hates Chevelle, and asks if that's useful. Rude replies obviously yes, and thanks him for the good work he did. The water-haired guy says he even tried to find someone from Harry's, like Chevelle, but since they study in different blocks, it was hard to look at the people, and because they have different classes, He has no idea what each one does. He hands over the book and asks to do what he can. At that moment, two students start walking and go to the front of the board, asking everyone to listen. The girls wonder if it really is Claude and what he is doing there. The boy announces that they are there on behalf of Professor Uvinos, who instead of giving them class today, actually summoned them to go to the main stage to prepare for the approaching exam. Then, with a smile on his face, he asks everyone to go. The MC just looks to the side and notices that Leus is not present and tries to figure out where the boy might have gone at that moment. At the same time, elsewhere, water is being poured over Leus's body. The group of bullies says he looks more like a wet cat since he's a monk and asks if he understood or if he's dumb enough not to understand, since the situation didn't change just because two others stayed on his side. At that moment, Manon approaches and tells them to stop since they're not there to humiliate him and asks if they don't know that. Another student gets his attention and starts whispering in his ear. He finds what he heard interesting and orders to bring the monster with them since the stage is ready. Elsewhere, Deo calls the MC and asks to give up since they did all they could and found neither the dorm nor the warehouse or anywhere else. He says that unfortunately, Leus disappeared and that they will be late for class. Rude doesn't believe in him just disappearing like that and asks where he could be. Dio suggests the boy must be hiding and warns that they will lose points if he doesn't show up on the main stage and that every point counts. Rude says it's okay and they start walking again, even though he feels in his head that something wrong is happening. After all the students gather on the stage, they wonder what is going on and why the teacher isn't there. Manon asks if everyone is present. A student answers yes. He smiles, thinking that's great, and asks to begin. At the same time, in another place, the teacher arrives at the classroom and finds it empty, not understanding where everyone could have gone. Meanwhile, the MC is walking with his colleague until Dio finds it strange since the passage is blocked and doesn't understand what is so important about the lecture to have the doors locked. Rude is thoughtful about this and imagines that, in fact, what is strange is his colleague knowing that secret passage. Meanwhile, in the main hall, Manon shows a ball he is holding and says that before apprentices become official mages, they cannot use magic without a mana sphere or stone. So the first thing to teach is how to activate mana inside the spheres. He says manifesting is basic, but also the most important, and that's why they prepared a test for everyone. He concludes that they will have a special class to test proficiency in mana manifestation. A student apologizes and asks if the teacher is really aware of that. Manon doesn't like this interruption, and so two elite students go towards the student who asked the question, who becomes scared by this intimidation. Then he starts getting beaten, frightening the rest of the class who watch without being able to do anything. Manon asks if anyone else has any questions. Immediately, everyone shuts up, not daring to say a word. He thinks this is great and warns that before starting, he will explain some things about the monospheres they will use, giving the example that they were created for the test, so they won't serve for anything beyond testing the student's proficiency. His sphere begins to glow, and he says that if mana is manifested in the sphere, it will change color and intensity depending on how skilled one is. He summarizes that the better one is at using mana, the clearer and stronger the color of the sphere will be. But since he knows they are Eden, he is already aware that the colors will be minimal, and therefore, they will be judged according to the amount of force they can exert on the sphere. The method they will test is target shooting. He says this while showing Leus tied up as the target. Manon explains that the target in question has a special property that can only be damaged by mana-included strikes, so the test is completely fair, and he orders them to manifest mana in the sphere to be able to throw it at the target. He finishes by saying that's all they will do in class that day, and asks if it's not simple. The students begin to panic since they don't understand what's happening, as he wants them to throw the spheres at a person. Manon looks to the side and says he will make it more fun by saying that whoever hits the target's head will earn extra points. Having said that, he snaps his fingers and all the balls are thrown to the ground, going towards all the students. He asks who will start by any chance, but finds something strange and asks what the hell happened since he doesn't see Rude there. His colleague says that's impossible, but he just calls him an idiot since that was the minimum to do. Elsewhere, Dio is watching this scene and doesn't understand what is happening. The MC approaches and asks if the class has started. His colleague covers his vision and asks him to go back, warning that something is happening and they need to find a teacher. He just stays silent listening to this. Meanwhile, on the stage, Manon is furious and Claude asks what they will do. He replies it's too late to do anything and asks just to follow the plan. He is frustrated since he did all that without informing Chevelle, and it's not going as he imagined. Besides, the white-haired girl grabs the ball in her hand, and Claude asks who will be brave enough to start, warning that if no one volunteers, they will choose one, pointing to a girl who is holding her hands. He tells her to go first, asking her to take the sphere. She is terrified by the situation and says she can't. He replies asking if she's sure, since if she doesn't do it, she will become the target. She is terrified hearing this and looks to the side, but all her friends have their faces turned away in fear. She realizes there is no way to escape the situation, and so she grabs a sphere in her hand. Claude says that, as expected, the color change is not very apparent, but asks not to worry, since the important part is the next step, and warns that she will get the maximum score if she hits the monster. She begins to cry, not knowing what to do, and he tells her to go ahead immediately. She just closes her eyes and throws the sphere, but it was so weak that it wasn't even enough to reach the stage, much less hit the target. Claude is disappointed seeing this and announces that she is disqualified. One of the students from the elite class steps down and grabs one of the spheres, saying he will set an example, and immediately throws it at the target, hitting Le Duchess's head dead on, who can do nothing since he is tied up. People are shocked seeing this while Claude claps, finding it amazing, and says it's not difficult. Then he asks who's next. Dio, watching from afar, is outraged by what is happening and turns around calling his friend to go after the teacher quickly, but realizes he simply disappeared. At that moment, someone volunteers to throw the ball, and Claude looks at who it is. It's the MC, smiling, saying he would like to try as well. Dio is startled to see this, as is Manon, who hadn't noticed his presence there. Le Duchess is worried when he sees him, and the MC keeps smiling the whole time. The place falls silent for a moment, and the big guy tries to process what is happening, as does the beautiful girl in white, who can't believe Rude appeared there suddenly. Claude says it's all right and tells him to go ahead. He says that if he hits the monster, he will get a bonus, but is startled as he can't finish speaking, and a huge hole opens in the target. The entire upper class is shocked, as well as the beautiful girl and Dio, who can't believe what they saw. Le Duchess looks to the side and sees the huge hole opened in the target right next to him. Rude takes a deep breath and apologizes, saying he unfortunately missed. Manon simply can't believe what he's seeing, thinking it's impossible. Le Duchess feels something strange and notices that the chains have loosened due to the impact. The MC crouches and picks up another sphere, saying that since he got close, he would like to try again. He starts to concentrate energy, but the sphere breaks and turns to dust in his hand, leaving the whole class paralyzed. Then he says the ball is defective and all Claude does is try to ask him to stop. Rude calls Le Duchess's attention and warns that this time it will be serious, and if he doesn't want to get hit, he should dodge. He says this with the sphere shining intensely. Le Duchess is shocked seeing that, and the MC throws with all his strength, flying like a cannonball. The upper-class students are shocked, as are the lower-class ones. Le Duchess takes a deep breath and dodges the sphere, but its target was Claude's head, who, after being hit, falls hard to the ground from the power he received even from a training ball. The MC looks at them all and says he was unlucky for standing still like a fool. Dio is in shock with everything he is seeing and imagines he already knew Rude wasn't just any guy. All the students are still shocked, as is the beautiful pink-eyed girl who couldn't take her eyes off the MC. The same goes for Manon, who doesn't understand how it's possible to have broken the target since he himself can barely leave a scratch. Besides that, he doesn't know what color, almost white from being so pure, was in the sphere, and tries to understand what trick an Eden used to achieve something like that, and doesn't know if it really was a trick, because if not, he has no idea who the hell Rude Chrissy is. The MC finishes warming up and says the target is all messed up, and since the real target moved, he suggests they choose a new one. The students wonder what he means by that, and he starts giving examples. pointing to a guy who had a pathetic attempt to humiliate others, and points to another saying he's a guy who likes to hang out in groups. He then picks up a ball from the ground and points to Manon, saying he would make a great target since he planned that whole special lecture. He says it will be fun. Manon gets furious with this provocation and shouts that he himself will choose a target and announces that the next target is named Rude Creasy and shouts for everyone to get him. Dio panics because things are getting complicated and he needs to help his friend until someone grabs his clothes. He turns and sees it is Professor Rowell. Dio is relieved to see it's a teacher and starts to explain what's happening, but she tells him to be quiet and passes in front of him, leaving him confused. He asks what the hell she is doing, and she replies that she is watching. This leaves him incredulous since there is a mess happening, and the teacher prefers to watch rather than help. She puts her hand over his mouth since he is making noise and puts him to sleep. Then she returns to watching intently what is happening. The first student from the upper class takes a hit in the face and falls hard to the ground. The MC stands still after throwing, and all the students go toward him, warning not to let another magic sphere touch him. They become powerful from having gotten close, but the grass-haired one starts by taking a punch to the chin. Then, the next one takes a kick in the face, leaving the last one scared about what is happening. Rude asks if he can let go, and he immediately obeys. Everyone is shocked by the result, and he makes it clear that he is in a bad mood, and therefore no one should touch him. Everyone in his classroom is in shock at what they are witnessing. Manon does not like how things are unfolding, and asks the subordinate if he prepared any magic spheres that day. The guy answers that there are some on the floor, but Manon calls him an idiot since he was not talking about the experimental ones, but the real ones. The grass-haired one says he has none, only the experimental ones. He thinks that is crap since he will have to use something low-level. However, he is aware that the target is Rude, even though he knows the boy is not just anyone, and so he yells for everyone in the hall to focus on the MC, and, concentrating energy into his sphere, he throws it with all his might, warning that anyone who hits him will be very well rewarded. He throws it hard toward Rude, but Leus jumps in front and takes the hit in the chest. The MC does not understand what that was, and asks why the hell he stepped in front. Manon gets furious about this, and shouts once more, wanting to know why everyone is standing there like idiots, since they are supposed to throw the spheres too. Meanwhile, the teacher keeps watching hidden. While the two are talking, everyone grabs a sphere to be able to throw since they must obey the order. Rude says he will ask just to be sure, and asks Leus if his hobby is getting hit, or if he has some fetish for suffering bullying. He gets furious and answers obviously not. The MC is relieved and asks why he took the hit instead of him, and reinforces that he had said not to interfere, so the same should apply the other way around. Leus says all of that is his fault. At that moment, one of the students throws a sphere, but the MC pushes his colleague and catches the sphere in his hand. Then he asks if he has gone crazy, and concentrating mana, says he hates people like those who think they are superior. The students keep shouting to throw more, but one of them gets hit in the head. Then the student throws the sphere, but the MC thinks their aim is ridiculously bad. So he grabs another ball from the floor and hits the redhead dead on. Then he keeps hitting one after another without giving anyone a chance. He has already counted 4 hits and wonders how many are left until he realizes Leus is not there. He looks to the side and asks what the hell the boy is doing taking hits to protect the students. Then he walks until he is finally in front of everyone who are scared by the situation. Rin asks him to wait and says Leus is bleeding. He turns his face so she doesn't see, but she still walks to him, asking first to untie the ropes that are holding him. All the students are shocked by her attitude in facing the upper class, but she only apologizes for not being able to do more. He looks back surprised and says nothing. Meanwhile, the MC is shooting all the other students from the upper classes, and after knocking down one more, he wonders if it was the 11th or 12th. Then he looks to the side and says there are only 3 left. They see Rude approaching, and Manon simply cannot believe what is happening, since all the students from the upper class are on the floor, hurt, and wonders if he is dreaming. The MC approaches them and, smiling, asks them to continue. Meanwhile, Rin finishes untying Leus and then asks permission to talk to him, but someone pulls her arm. Her friend asks her to come back, and she looks back and sees all the students in shock for being near someone called a monster. She takes a deep breath and asks how long they intend to keep this up and questions if they really think Leus is a monster. She says he is no better than anyone else and thinks this is very cruel, affirming that the boy did nothing to them and wants to know why they keep treating him badly like that. She continues wanting to know if it's because of the fear they all have of the Harrys and confesses she doesn't know how incredible the guys in the higher classes are, but warns they shouldn't let those people control them like that. While she was saying this, a boy flies out and leaves all the students scared as he falls unconscious to the ground. Leus looks forward again and is shocked to see Rude face to face with Manhwa. The big guy says that show is useless and guarantees that Chevelle will take action against him and the monster. The MC says this talk about monsters is making him irritated, and after getting closer, says there are people who suffer daily because of others without being able to do anything about it, and people who gather to make someone's life weaker, more powerless, and miserable. Having said that, he questions which of the two is the real monster and says that person's name is Manhwa. At this moment, Dio appears running, also shouting MC's name. He turns around and comes face to face with a glowing ball heading toward his face. However, he dodges, and the ball, with all its force, hits Manhwa's face squarely, a perfect headshot. Rude watches this, as do all the other students, until Manhwa falls hard to the ground from the hit. MC is left confused about what happened until someone starts approaching. He looks in that direction and sees everyone calling the woman Professor Rowell. He realizes he has seen that woman before and remembers seeing her fighting Shik Muan at the auction house, which surprises him since he never imagined she was a teacher at Helios. The students question whether the professor really threw the magical sphere at Manhwa and feel relieved since they are safe. She calls MC and asks why he dodged. He is confused by this question, and she takes another sphere, saying that he probably could have stopped the ball easily and that dodging is no fun. The cloud-haired boy, seeing this, can't believe the professor is going to throw again. She asks him not to dodge because she is very curious, and MC, worried, starts questioning what she means. Suddenly, the door opens, and Hale asks what the hell is going on there. They see the professor holding a sphere in her hand, a target with a hole, and several players unconscious on the floor. A staff member screams desperately, asking what Professor Rowell did. She looks to the side, not understanding anything. Dio feels more relieved as the situation calms down, and, looking to the side, sees Rude fallen on the ground. He doesn't understand why, while Professor Hale asks to call the medical team and for the other students to return to the classroom. Rowell just remains silent. Afterwards, still at the school, some students are restless, and Lapis warns that everyone is staring at them and asks how long they plan to stay there since they should return to the territory. Linus responds that he is almost certain the commotion isn't because of him, and also questions where this so-called territory would be, since all of Helios is their territory. Then he says he saw something really cool during his private training, even though it's hard to believe something so cute could grow and become a mid-level monster. The blonde boy gets angry and asks if he's really going to keep bragging about his private training. The grape-haired boy laughs, but soon becomes serious because there is something specific he wants to know and asks to hear about the time he met the dark mage. Immediately, Lapis asks to speak quietly, and after thinking a bit, responds that he already told about it since he only met him by chance and has nothing more to add. Linus stands up, not accepting that, and asks for at least a detail like the personality or what he likes, as well as hobbies and stuff like that. Lapis is startled by so much insistence and asks why he wants to know all that. He replies that the dark mage is his goal and the target he spent a long time searching for, and says he even tried to get an audience through Ophion, but the dark mage's master always cut off any suspicious person without hesitation. The blonde boy is scared hearing all that. However, he pauses to think and remembers the night they fled the hall. Ren said the situation is very bad and that there will be a serious talk with the master upon return. Then, she calls Blow to see if he is hurt. He replies that he is fine. They decide to proceed, and Lapis catches their attention, asking them to wait. The two look confused, and he becomes restless because this might be a unique opportunity. Because of that, he says he knows it's sudden and then lowers his voice, saying he would like to receive teachings directly from below. MC doesn't understand what is happening, and the blonde boy shouts once more that he sincerely wishes to become the Dark Mage's disciple. He fully knows there is a long road ahead, but his dream remains to become a powerful mage, and for that, he promises to give his best to not tarnish the reputation of the famous Dark Mage. However, Ren quickly interrupts, apologizing because they can't do that. He gets upset, but she explains that the members of Ophion have the duty to dedicate themselves only to their missions and, according to the rules, they cannot accept disciples, so she believes it is not possible. The Dark Mage whispers, remembering that this once happened, but she asks him to stay silent. After remembering all this, Lapis becomes very embarrassed and can only wonder why he did that, as it was thoughtless. At that moment, Linus notices something and says that Chevelle is in front of him. Because of that, he stands up to greet him. Chevelle recognizes him and questions whether he will really continue walking with the Eternal Eden, since that is lowering himself too much. Lapis doesn't like hearing that, and replies that it's better than a certain someone trying to maintain power in a childish way. The grape-haired guy finds it funny and shouts to Chevelle that Lapis called him childish. He gets irritated by this since his friend is having a lot of fun provoking others. Chevelle starts walking again, saying it's pathetic and that he won't waste time on it. Lapis doesn't like hearing that and asks how long the arrogant one intends to live that way. Linus finds it funny, as it seems more like he's worried about the boy. Meanwhile, Anna listens to everything without saying anything. In another place, in the teacher's room, the MC is with Leus being interrogated by the teachers. Angelica says that, although she doesn't believe it, she heard from the students that the damage caused to the target wall, as well as the situation of the students on the floor, were the work of a single person, and asks Rude Chrissy if that is true. He lowers his head and answers that he has no idea what they are talking about. However, Raoul calls attention and asks if he isn't a mage. Leducis is confused by the question, but the MC just remains silent. Angelica doesn't know what she's talking about, since if Rude really was a mage, there would be no reason for him to be at that school. He becomes thoughtful, unsure if he was very reckless, and wonders if the teacher sensed something, but concludes she didn't, since he didn't use a drop of mana. The teacher just keeps staring until he starts saying his head hurts. The teacher panics, asking to take him directly to the infirmary, but Raoul says the boy is fine. The teacher isn't sure of that, and even claims that Raoul herself carried Rude to the room since he fainted in the hall. The MC, still holding his head, asks for permission, not sure what they want from him, and says he was just surprised to see the magic orb coming toward him, and because of that doesn't remember anything else. Raoul tells him to stop lying, but Angelica says that for now, Professor Hale will handle the punishments for the clad students involved in the event, and until the matter is resolved, both will have to return to the dormitory to rest. He becomes thoughtful, as he apparently will get away unpunished, and notices the teacher kept staring at him, which makes him embarrassed since the atmosphere will clearly become awkward from then on. After that, the upperclassmen return to their dormitories, and Chevelle is surprised, wanting to know why they are so beaten up. Claude starts to speak, but everyone begins to tremble in fear upon seeing something. Chevelle doesn't understand what's happening, and asks why they are so nervous until he looks to the side and sees Rude walking with his friend. Leducis looks to the side and sees Chevelle staring at them. The MC also notices this and smiles. This makes the blonde very furious. Leducis starts to worry, but the MC puts his hand on his shoulder and tells him to keep going. He keeps watching for a moment and decides to obey, following his friend along the way. Chevelle just keeps staring, thinking about it. While the two walk, Leducis suddenly stops, and the MC turns around asking if something happened. He replies that from that moment on, more things might end up happening because of himself, and feels as if a monster is speaking in his ear, that he only brings misery to everyone around him. Then, in few words, he warns that he will make the MC miserable. Rude asks if he is by any chance cursing him, and also tells him to stay calm, since he must have witnessed what happened in the hall. So even trying not to be arrogant, he warns that even if 100 from the upper class attacked him, nothing would happen. Having said that, he makes it clear that if something happens, it will not be his friend's fault, and therefore he should stop worrying about others and start worrying about himself. Leus says that his friend doesn't know anything, and the MC agrees with that since he really doesn't know, and also decides not to ask, since apparently he won't say anything, but one thing he makes clear is to ask for help when needed. Leus is surprised hearing that, and he continues because he doesn't want to hear words like "don't pay attention to me," and no matter what, he will help. Leus becomes thoughtful and doesn't understand why Rude insists so much on helping him, and without thinking about what he will say, he says he doesn't need his help. At that moment, silence fills the air, and the MC gets irritated since he just told him not to say something like that, and he realizes it and runs away, but Rude doesn't let him and goes after him. After that, in the classroom, all the students are gathered, and a girl asks what will happen to them. A boy says that obviously something will happen to the clad group, but he imagines that it also involves the upper class. Dao just watches until the girl asks what all of that has to do with them, blaming the monster, since all the problems only exist because of him. The boy agrees and doesn't understand why they have to suffer because of one person. Everyone else becomes thoughtful about it, and she states that all of this is bad, and that it would be interesting if they asked the teachers to transfer them to another class. He doesn't find that interesting, since it would be more interesting to ask to transfer the monster to another school. However, before finishing saying that, Dio shouts wanting to know what they are talking about. Rim also shouts telling them to stop the nonsense. All the students are surprised by that shout. She questions why everyone is so selfish since they only think about themselves, and points out that they don't like to be avoided but love to avoid Leus, calling him a monster without even imagining how the boy feels, and also points out if they really believe that all of this is Leus's fault, since no one would like to be called that for no reason. She reinforces that everyone keeps calling the boy a monster, but everyone knows the truth since they are like him. After all, they are all humans with feelings. Her classmate interrupts and says that everyone saw, recalling a certain day in the library when everyone was shocked by something. At the top of the library, Chevel's group was gathered, and Leus was kneeling with a dark aura coming from his body as if he were unconscious. After remembering that, she asks how she can ignore it as if it were nothing, since she was very scared. Rin doesn't know exactly what to say, but Il responds from afar, saying it's illusion magic. She explains that she heard Chevel's specialty is illusion magic, and he was even the best with magic orbs, so a skilled Heiress could show such an illusion. She closes her book and, standing up, asks everyone to think a little, since if there was really something wrong with Leus, the administration would never allow a person like that in the school, but from what she saw, no one seemed to care enough to think about it. They are surprised since they hadn't thought of something like that, and Isle, with her serious look, points out that everyone kept using the excuse that the boy is a monster just because they fear the upper class, or fear Chevel himself. The girl doesn't accept hearing all that, and retorts since her classmate acts like she did nothing but is just like everyone else. Isle replies that she is indeed like them, but warns that the situation has changed since because of the shock. Everyone must have forgotten, and makes it clear that with Rude in their class, they can completely change the situation. All the students are surprised hearing that until Leus appears in the room and startles everyone, who asks if he is by any chance a ghost. At this moment, the MC also enters and sees everyone looking at them, becoming confused about what is happening. Dio is surprised to see that it is Rude and runs over wanting to know if they are okay. The MC responds that he is, although a bit dizzy but embarrassed. The cloud-haired one warns that he was talking about the clouds. Leus tries to escape once again, but the MC does not let him. At this moment, Il approaches saying the word monster, but then apologizes and asks if the boy's name is not Leus. She also asks if the MC's name is not Rude Chrissy. She extends her hand and introduces herself as Yel Florin Chrome, also saying that she hopes from the bottom of her heart that they can get along. The MC also feels her hand while greeting her, but does not understand what she means by getting along. Then another boy from the class asks for permission and, a bit embarrassed, introduces himself as Noiden and also asks that they get along. Then both Eckel and Julia introduce themselves, and Rude becomes confused since suddenly a giant circle has formed around them, introducing themselves and asking about the things that happened in the hall. Only 2 students refuse, since they see no point in allying with a monster. Rin is happy to see that most of the class is doing the right thing. At this moment, someone calls for Leus. It was 2 students who wanted to talk about him having prevented the magic orbs from hitting the whole class by putting his own body in front, and for that, they say they thank him from the bottom of their hearts. He is surprised to see this, as is the MC, who smiles to see that things are going better than he thought. After some time in the infirmary, Manon wakes up. Chevelle, who was sitting beside him, questions what the group did since he himself asked for nothing. The boy apologizes and says he will even take responsibility for everything. However, he says he is fine, since it happened and there is nothing more to do. Then he remains silent, remembering a conversation he had earlier. He was in the teacher's room saying he had no involvement with the accident. Hale, smiling, says he understands and says that if necessary, there will be no problem in proceeding with a punishment for Manon and the Claudes, which is Chevelle's group, since this punishment must happen according to the school regulations. Chevelle already realizes what is going on and, without hesitation, asks what he wants. The teacher is pleased to see he understood quickly. Manon notices his friend is daydreaming and asks if something happened. He says he heard that the next training for the lower class will happen and that some from the upper class will accompany it. And although he doesn't know exactly what the teacher's plan, he says Hale wants him there, but with his terrible aura says it's a great opportunity to show what he does to those who go against his word. However, Manon calls his attention and decides to talk about Rude, since no matter how much he thinks about it, he says he cannot consider him a normal boy, and so thinks it's better to say it. Chevelle does not like hearing this at all, and asks if he got hit so hard on the head that he is feeling strange, since from what he understands, his dear colleague is asking to be careful with a mere student from the lower class. Anna asks him to calm down, but the blonde just says not to worry about something so useless, and says he will give interesting news soon. After that, in the dormitory, the MC is thoughtful about whether he is doing well on the mission. He remembers all the students coming to talk to him and how bizarre that was, and also how all the people finally talked to Leus. Then he turns and looks fixedly at his sleeping colleague and thinks he does not know exactly what burden he carries alone, but hopes the small change that happened that day might have helped somehow, and then decides to sleep for good. At that moment, a shadow begins to enter the room and moves toward Leus. The shadow begins to materialize, and with a somber appearance, warns that it is arriving soon. However, the MC appears behind it and throws it to the ground while holding its body and asks who the hell it is. The shadow looks back, which catches his attention, but at the same moment, the shadow begins to fade until it completely disappears in front of him. He tries to understand what happened and what the shadow was doing with Leus. He wonders if this is also Chevelle's doing, and, looking at his friend, just tries to figure out what the hell happened to the boy. After that, the next day, still at school, 2 girls were walking, and one of them says they will probably encounter the monster in the training field and is worried about it. While they talked, they noticed something and saw that both Leus and Rude were going in the same direction. The one in blue gets worried, but the other says, "Hi," leaving her friend with wide eyes. However, Leus doesn't know how to act and just walks past without saying anything. Then, the MC goes up to them and greets them with his charming smile, leaving the 2 surprised. Then, he goes back to walking and calls his friend, telling him that when someone greets you, you should greet back. Then he asks if he felt anything strange the night before when he went to sleep. He turns confused, but the MC just asks to drop it, although inside he tries to understand what the hell that shadow was. He thinks it disappeared without leaving a trace, and even though he's sure it was some kind of magic, he believes Leus has no idea what it is. He also pays attention since he heard the shadow say, "It's coming soon," and has a feeling it will be dangerous, and doesn't know if he should warn the school, even though he has no proof. So at least he thinks it's interesting to talk about it with his master. At the same time, Leus stares at him, and the 2 stand there like fools in the middle of the hallway. The MC apologizes and says he didn't know his friend was waiting since he avoided him all the previous day. At that moment, Dio appears all cheerful, saying good morning to Rude, and after approaching, gets embarrassed and also says good morning to Leus. Silence hangs in the air, and the MC tells him to respond to the greeting. Then, After some effort, Leus manages to say good morning. Rude says, "That's how it's done." But all Dio sees is something like the MC asking a little dog to give a paw and saying, "Good job," when it does it right. At that moment, other students appear greeting Rude and also say that teacher Raoul is looking for him. The MC doesn't like that at all and just asks to pretend they didn't hear. Dio looks at them since he didn't know his friend was already familiar with other people. The boys say goodbye to the group, and the MC, after looking to the side, asks what Dio is doing and if he won't come with them. He stays silent for a moment and smiles. Then he challenges them to bet on who gets to the classroom first. After arriving at the destination, the teacher was in front of everyone saying that the clads involved in the last incident will receive the proper punishment and warns everyone that he doesn't want something like that to happen again, also asking that those unpleasant memories be erased so they can focus on preparing for the upcoming training. With a smile on his face, he says he doesn't know what might happen in the future. However, Dio is bored listening to all that since he doesn't know what he should be preparing for. The MC asks what kind of field training this is, and if they will need to defeat monsters, the teachers release. Dio answers that the teachers wouldn't do something so scary. He's confused since he has no idea what it's about, but is sure the superiors will match the difficulty to each student's level, and although not certain, he imagines how it would be for Leus. At that moment, teacher Raoul appears behind them calling for him. Dio is startled seeing this, as is Leus. All the teacher said was to follow her, and the MC just looked back without understanding anything. Meanwhile, outside, Utiarian was eating and then told her servant that Tessie found something interesting. He asks what it is, and she says that Tessie will go to the Eden's training field and warns that she will go too. The servant can't believe what he's hearing and screams in despair. Meanwhile, the teacher drags the MC by his clothes since she had ordered him to follow her. Already outside the school, Lapis sees the group gathered and asks why there are so many people there. A boy replies that he heard that Professor Raoul is going to duel someone from the lower class. He panics upon hearing this, trying to understand who the boy is. His friend asks him to calm down and says it is the student everyone is talking about, and, after thinking a little about the name, replies that it is Rude Chrissy. At that moment, Dio steps in front of the MC, asking the professor why she requested to duel someone who did nothing wrong, since that is not right. However, she, with her serious look, just tells them to disappear from there, and he immediately obeys, going behind Leus. The cloud-haired boy questions if everything will really be okay. Meanwhile, the MC just thinks he already knew some inconvenience would happen, but did not expect the professor to insist so much. He notices many students gathered and, looking at his sword, believes it is a good opportunity since he can show everyone how ordinary he really is, so they will lose interest in him. The professor prepares herself and, after drawing her sword, orders to start. At the same time, he panics, not understanding why he is holding a wooden sword while she wields a real one. Raoul tells him to use magic since that will cause no problem. He tries to say something, but she attacks, leaving the MC frustrated since she does not listen at all, but he decides it is better to let her continue to show she lost. However, he is forced to dodge the blow and, looking at the professor, imagines that if that strike had hit him, he would have left with much more than a wound. Because of that, he starts yelling for her to wait and listen, but it is useless. Meanwhile, the students are surprised to see someone from this year's lower class dodge a professor's attacks. The same goes for Lapis, who is also surprised. Meanwhile, Raoul keeps ordering him to fight properly, and, attacking again, makes clear she will not go easy. Because of this, the blow comes too fast at the MC, to the point Dio shouts to his friend to be careful. Rude blocks the sword with his wooden sword, leaving both surprised, especially himself, as he is upset for having acted by reflex and defended. However, the wooden sword starts cracking until it breaks. This catches Rin and her friend's attention until she runs away. Lapis, seeing what happened, says he was scared, especially seeing Leus holding the professor's sword with only his arm. She steps back, ordering not to interrupt since it will be dangerous. Dio starts shouting it would only be dangerous if no one had interrupted, as the wooden sword broke in two. She asks to try one more time, and warns it will not break if he uses magic. However, The MC immediately refuses the duel request. She questions why, and he replies that he did not even want to participate in that and that he is not skilled enough. Dio agrees, saying Rude's body is weak and cannot exert himself so much. She retorts that the boy was moving calmly, but the cloud-haired boy responds that it is just her imagination. Lapis and his friend are surprised by what they witnessed and comment they never saw the professor be so insistent. They also realized Rude definitely blocked Rowell's sword. Even though it was a non-magical attack, he managed to withstand the strength of a professor. All the time, Rowell insists they keep fighting until Lapis, seeing this, approaches them and, after getting the professor's attention, says she is not the type to force someone to do what they don't want. Because of that, he bows and says he would like to learn from her, but the professor immediately responds she does not want to. This creates an awkward atmosphere, and he just turns away, thinking that was rude. The MC just watches, as he is almost sure he has seen the blonde boy somewhere before. At that moment, the professor says there are many distractions there, and they will settle this next time. She leaves, assuring there will be plenty of time for that. The group is gathered, and Dio notices that Rin appeared out of nowhere. She says she heard a strange noise and, because of that, asks if they are okay. The Hare of Sea replies that yes, and just comments that Professor Rowell was trying to kill Rude, and that besides that, everything is fine. She is shocked hearing that, since something so serious was spoken calmly. While Lapis was crying to his group for having been rejected once again, the MC imagines that his thought was right, since Rowell really is the person who was with him at the auction when she was in the form of the Black Mage. Rin keeps asking if they are really okay, and, after everyone is silent for a moment, she feels a little embarrassed since she is only there because she was worried, even though she hadn't introduced herself first. However, the MC, already knowing who she is, says her name and asks if she happened to receive Ben's letter. She is surprised hearing that, and happily says that deep down, she already knew it was he who sent it, and knew because the MC was mentioned in the letter. Dio listens to that confused. She smiles, thanking for everything since she really liked receiving that letter from her brother. He replies that it's no problem at all, but the cloud-haired one is curious since he doesn't know if they really knew each other before. At that moment, the girl's friend appears running and approaching, asks why everyone is gathered there. Dio answers that it was a complicated situation since the professor called Rude out of nowhere to fight. At that moment, the MC looks to the side and tells Leus that he survived because of him and is grateful for having defended the blow. Dio agrees, saying that if the prince hadn't stopped the attack, things would have ended badly. He thinks about that and smiles since he liked helping someone. Everyone is surprised seeing that since they had never seen him smile, and so the friendship among them grows a little more. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the teachers are gathered. One of them asks if they already solved the tower issue. The teacher replies that yes, and that, in fact, it doesn't seem like there will be relevant changes. She thinks that's very good, and sees that the participants will be Chevelle Hadelio, Anna Burb, Linus Griom, and Cyndia Mass. She questions if they will be only the usual members, and becomes thoughtful reading that Chevelle will also be present. The teacher explains that they are in a period outside of classes, and therefore, there are not many from the upper class at school. The principal questions why they included Chevelle. Hale takes the floor and says that the lower class training this time will be on another level. It will even be the first time they have so many students teleporting and conducting a class together with the tower. So he believed that unexpected events could happen and decided to select the most skilled upper class students to help. He emphasizes that he obviously didn't base his opinion only on himself, and firmly believes it will be a good experience from which Chevelle will learn a lot. She says she really hopes there are no problems and asks how the teleporter is. He just smiles and answers, it is in perfect condition. She thinks that's great since she really wants the training to strengthen relations between the tower and the school, and so she wants the teachers to accompany the students so they can do their best. After that, already at night, the MC is holding the communication stone. However, he is confused as to why his master doesn't answer. He really wants to talk about the black shadow he found in the room, besides mentioning Professor Rowell. He decides to return to his room since he's not getting answers, and also because the shadow might appear to attack Leus again. He reflects that after the shadow appeared, many complicated things happened. but there were good things in it, since, somehow, his circle of friendship is growing, as well as Leus's. He runs back to his room and, after opening the door, enters thinking he doesn't quite know what to do since his master doesn't answer, and wonders if he should send a letter. Amid these thoughts, he is startled to see Leus sitting in the chair. He tries to hide it, asking when his friend woke up, and says he went out a bit since he likes to walk at night, asking if he would like to join next time. However, the boy stays silent and says that for a moment he thought he had left. He says that and gets up, but Rude asks where the hell he would go. Leus just goes to his bed and lies down, leaving silence in the room. The MC confesses he was startled, and after putting away his shirt, he also lies down. But before sleeping, he calls his friend's attention and talks about the training, which usually happens in teams of 4, and if the method is the same, then the 2 of them could be on the same team. Leus is surprised to hear this, but after thinking a bit, he asks how it would work regarding Dio, since if the boy joins them, there would be 3 in the team, and they would still need 1 more. Rude asks if by any chance he wants to get a good grade and quickly says he is just joking, since he is right. They will only need 1 more member. Still at night, but in another place, at Leus's mansion, Lispin approaches his mistress, and after she calls his attention, asks why she has a bad feeling about what will happen in the next days. The next day, a pigeon is carrying a letter and delivers it into someone's hand. It was Rubymonter. Relieved that she finally arrived, she starts reading since apparently they got something. The letter said the food was great and that she even played with the humans, besides the classes not being fun and the room being suffocating, so she is wishing to return home. She gets irritated reading all this, cutting the power inside her house, and asks what kind of report that was. At school, several students are gathered, and the MC is thoughtful, finding it strange that several days passed, and he still couldn't get in touch with his master, wondering if something happened to Ophion. At that moment, Dio appears calling him, saying that Professor Hale's class will go first. The MC finds it cool to see all that excitement, and asks if by any chance he hadn't heard, commenting that the training field will be at the Magic Tower. Rude doesn't like that at all, as he doesn't understand why the Magic Tower would get involved with a magic school, and even in beginner training, he thinks it's impossible since something like that doesn't make sense. While Dio talks to Leus, the MC remembers the shadow that appeared in his room and imagines it never appeared again and has no idea what relation it has with Leus, but assures he will find out after the training. Dio asks why they are not in teams for the training, since they would be the best team of all. Suddenly, Isle appears saying she also worked hard to prepare. Everyone is confused since she appeared out of nowhere, and she repeats that according to the documents she saw, she thought they would be grouped in teams for the training, but realized it was changed, and the rumor that they will go to the Magic Tower is definitely true. She says she was going to create the perfect team of talented people, and that's why she thought it was a shame. The MC is confused by that phrase, and she adds that he would be the first she wanted to recruit. He still doesn't understand, but thanks her for the consideration. She looks at Dio and says he would not be called. At that moment, Rude looks aside and asks what Leus has, since he is acting strange. All the students are surprised, and only then does the MC notice a group passing in front of him, which is the upper-class group led by Chevelle. Dio is surprised to see so many upper-class students, and Isle comments that apparently the rumors that the Harrys would participate are true. Rude is thoughtful about that and tries to understand why Chevelle would participate among all the people and doesn't know if it is a coincidence or not, and if the guy intends to do something or not. He then looks aside and sees that Leus was looking at him. Then, with a smile on his face, he tells him not to worry, since the teachers will also be at the test location and nothing will happen. He remains silent. The MC thinks it is a good opportunity to deal with the arrogant blonde. The teacher calls the attention of the upper class and warns that, although they are Harris, they are forbidden from acting on their own, and therefore asks politely that they follow the instructions of the other teachers, including herself. Then, looking forward, she emphasizes that this is mainly for Chevelle, who must make sure to behave. He says he already knows. She then starts to walk away and wonders why Professor Hale called the troublemaker Chevelle. Near that place were Raoul and Yuti. The teacher calls her attention, and she asks what it is. The teacher questions where Ram is, and she says she tied him up to behave. Then she asks where the boy that Tessie talked so much about is. She looks fixedly toward the MC, and Dio notices this, since when he looks back, he shouts to Rude that Professor Raoul is there. However, when they looked again, the MC was already running, leaving even Leus confused. At that moment, someone approaches and touches him. It was Rin, wanting to know if something happened for Rude to run off. However, before she could finish speaking, the teacher runs past them, chasing after the MC. Rin laughs at the situation and then grabs Leus' arm, calling him to go too. After the students gather, a teacher tells Hale that the arrival of all students from the lower and upper classes is confirmed, and the rest are already on the way. He finds it interesting that the preparations are complete, and says they can start. As he says this, a shadow appears behind the instructor, who becomes confused by the phrase. Hale apologizes since he wasn't speaking to him, and still not understanding, tries to ask what is happening but is swallowed by the shadow and devoured while the Four Eyes finds what he sees amusing. This happens in front of all the students, although they can't see because it is too high. At the site, a giant magical stone is presented. The students are surprised, and Dio comments that he has never seen one so big. Rin says that with every passing second it seems more real, and asks if they will really go to the magic tower. Cloudhair looks around since he doesn't see Rude. The students are watching, and Lapis approaches the magic circle, and, after analyzing, comments that it is exactly like Professor Mamelray's theory in The Truth of the Magic Circle, since it is a typical teleporter that operates with 10 mana links. He also observed that there are separate formulas, and, for that reason, it was built with something extremely advanced. It is even his first time seeing a combination like that. Everyone is surprised that Lapis understands so much until the MC appears and says that combination is called Phenode, and that it is a new formula combination, since with Yuelt's formula as a base, they managed to connect and activate simultaneously at least 5 different magic circles, and as far as he knows, it is not suitable for teleport circles. Lapis stands up and asks if by any chance it was the MC who fought against Professor Raoul, and, looking at him, asks to explain more about how the structure works, if there is something to activate multiple magic circles simultaneously, and if it is based on the principle of Belzard's aspects. Rude looks directly at the magic circle and begins to feel that something is strange, until that sensation becomes much stronger. The blonde continues saying that recently, at a conference, they talked about the linked activation of magic circles and the proposed solution to problems arising from formula combinations. However, the MC interrupts him because he wanted to say something but someone arrives pulling his arm. It was Yudarian saying she caught him, also shouting Tessie's name, saying she finally caught him. However, the teacher just stands still, making the little girl ask if something happened. At that moment, Dio and his friends appear calling for Rude until the group is startled because a shadow started to appear in the place. Everyone tries to understand what is happening, and Tessie immediately runs toward Yutarian. Lapis is also scared, and rightly so, since an evil shadow began to form above the circle. The MC also keeps watching, knowing what that shadow is until it fully materializes. Even the upper class begins to question what it is, and whether it is an event. And the same goes for the lower class, who are confused since an enormous shadow appeared before them that they had never seen before. The monster raises its hand and creates a strong whirlwind in all directions, causing people to panic, questioning if that is the training location and if it has already started. Leducis also panics, but the MC appears and stands in front of the class, asking them not to leave his back. Professor Hale throws his glasses on the floor and with a frightened expression, says he also wants to achieve his goal. A magical quadrant appears on the ceiling, and the whirlwind grows stronger, forming several of them. He warns that it will soon open until it disappears. One of the desperate teachers asks everyone to leave the place, and Chevelle, confused, shouts questioning if the shadow that appeared is not the work of the teachers. She replies that it is not and that something is wrong, so she once again asks everyone to leave the place together. However, they stop halfway and realize the whirlwind blocked the passage to the door, and the students don't know what to do as it grows more intense. They even close their eyes in desperation until they decide to open them and see that Professor Khan is protecting them with her magic shield. However, she says her real name is Damien, The shadow continues watching from afar, and the woman, with her hair changing color, asks how he dares to cause that inside Helios school and warns that it's better to be prepared. She says this looking directly at the monster. The MC thinks the shape of the teleport circle changed, but realizes it did not change because the shadow appeared. Rather, it was planned from the start. He considers that it might have been made by someone from Helios school or that the shadow is connected to something dark. At that moment, Damien appears running, begging Professor Raoul for help, since she herself is not a battler-type mage. The shadow makes its first move and aims directly at Leducis, making the MC notice it immediately. That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks.